Chapter 2052. Day City is attacking? The black-robed old man was slightly stunned when he heard Yi Xian, and then his expression instantly changed when he looked behind Yi Xian. After that, he turned around and vanished on the spot. Yi Xian was stunned. Did he flee? Right at this moment, the black-robed old man appeared in front of him again, and there were actually over 100 people behind the old man. All of them were at the Daoming realm. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he witnessed this scene. Eternal Night City is quite ferocious. They were able to gather so many experts in such a short period of time. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man who led the group from Day City's forces stopped moving, and he spoke solemnly when he saw the experts of Eternal Night City behind Yi Xian. You really are from Eternal Night City. Yi Xian smiled. As you wish. The middle-aged man took a deep and long glance at Yi Xian, and then he gazed at the black-robed old man by Yi Xian's side. Chu Xiu, good job. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and led the others away. They had no other choice but to attack Yi Xian just like that because he'd fled to Eternal Night City, right? At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the distance, suddenly attacked. A sword howl resounded, and then a flying sword slashed through the battlefield. The middle-aged man's pupils constricted, and then he swiftly turned around and smashed his fist forward. Bang! An expanse of light erupted, and then the middle-aged man was blasted over 30 kilometers away. Moreover, his body was instantly blasted into pieces as soon as he stopped moving. Both sides were stunned when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly shouted, "Kill them!" As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. Chu Xiu and the others were stunned by this scene. Do we fight? Chu Xiu and the others practically didn't hesitate to charge forward as well. Because the experts of Day City had charged towards Yi Xian as soon as Yi Xian had charged forward. However, Yi Xian hadn't charged forward, and he'd charged forward for a moment before retreating towards Chu Xiu and the others. The battle began. It had to be said that this battle had come too suddenly. No one was mentally prepared for it. They could only fight. Of course, both sides wanted to fight. At this moment, it could be said that when enemies met, their eyes were exceptionally red. Yi Xian did not slip away right away. Instead, he kept a sneak attack. He flicked his thumb from time to time, and every time he flicked his thumb, a strong man from the Daylight City would be beheaded. In less than a few breaths of time, nearly 7 Daoming realm experts were killed. In the distance, the middle-aged man in the lead noticed this scene, and his expression changed drastically. Retreat! 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 The experts of Daybreak City retreated as they fought, because they had also discovered how terrifying Yi Xian was. They couldn't block Yi Xian's flying sword at all. As for the experts of Evernight City, they became more and more excited as they fought, because they had completely suppressed the experts of Daybreak City. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Don't let them escape." As he spoke, another flying sword slashed out. In the distance, a Daoming realm expert wasn't able to dodge in time, and his forehead was pierced by Yi Xian's sword while his soul was instantly absorbed by the green profound sword. He was using the green profound sword this time because he wanted to kill. Moreover, these people were great nourishment for the green profound sword, so he naturally couldn't miss it. The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian with astonishment. Yi Xian suddenly gazed at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's expression changed drastically, and he was just about to leave when a sword slashed towards him. The middle-aged man was horrified, and he clenched his right fist tightly before smashing it forward. Even though it was only his soul, the strength behind this punch was still terrifying. Formidable energy surged out from his fist, and in an instant, the space in front of him started to seethe. Unfortunately, his opponent was Yi Xian, and it was Yi Xian who was using the green profound sword. As the green profound sword slashed down, the middle-aged man's formidable energy was instantly dispersed. Bang! A huge amount of energy was instantly dispersed, and then the green profound sword pierced through the middle-aged man's forehead. Bang! The middle-aged man didn't even have the chance to speak before he was completely absorbed by the green profound sword. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword returned to his hand. He glanced into the distance and was about to attack again when an extremely terrifying pressure suddenly assaulted him from the horizon. Yixian's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked up into the sky. In the next moment, the sky split open, and a middle-aged man in a luxurious robe walked out. A praxis transformation expert. This person was the current city lord of Daoist City, Mu Su. Yixian sheathed the green profound sword and silently retreated to the side. With Mu Su's appearance, the experts of Eternal Night City stopped one after another. Even though they wanted to kill the members of Daoist City, they weren't stupid. A praxis transformation expert wasn't someone they could resist. Meanwhile, the space in the sky above Chu Xiu and the others suddenly split open, and then a man in a black robe walked out. He was also a praxis transformation expert. This person was the city lord of Eternal Night City, Han Jiang. The city lords of both sides had appeared. In the distance, Mu Su's expression was extremely gloomy. Because Daoist City had actually lost 18 Dao Ming realm experts since the beginning. On the other hand, not a single person from Eternal Night City had died. 0 for 18. What a huge loss. Mu Su's gaze was sharp as a sword as he looked at Yixian, who was hiding behind the crowd. Yixian looked at Mu Su and smiled lightly. I'm sorry. I didn't hold back and kill to my heart's content, causing you to lose so many experts. I'm deeply sorry for that. As he spoke, he even bowed slightly. The expressions of the experts of Daoist City instantly became ferocious when they witnessed this scene. He was trying to kill someone. Mu Su raised his right hand slightly and grabbed at Yixian from afar. This grab caused the space where Yixian stood to distort into a strange vortex, and within the vortex, Yixian felt a myriad of forces tearing him apart. Fortunately, he'd released his aura and sword aura right from the beginning. Otherwise, he would have probably been shattered into countless pieces the moment Mu Su attacked. But even then, his aura and sword aura were gradually vanishing. Yixian's brows knit together slightly, and he was about to attack. However, the city governor of Eternal Night City, Han Jiang, suddenly flicked his sleeve, and then the space Yixian resided in instantly returned to normal. Mu Su looked at Han Jiang. Han Jiang, he doesn't seem to be from Eternal Night City. Han Jiang roared with laughter. So what? All I know is that he was killing people from Daoist City just now. As long as he's an enemy of Daoist City, then he's a friend of Eternal Night City. Haven't you heard that the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Ha! Mu Su's eyes narrowed slightly, and they flickered with ghastly killing intent. Han Jiang smiled. Mu Su, with me here, don't even think about killing this little friend today. If you want to fight, we can fight right now. However, you have to think it through. We have this little friend here, and he can kill a Dao Ming realm expert with 2 strikes of his sword. Yixian suddenly smiled. Let me correct you, it's 1 strike of his sword. Han Jiang was slightly stunned, and then he roared with laughter. Yes, 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 it's 1 strike of his sword. I was mistaken. Ha! Han Jiang, right? Mu Su's expression was extremely unsightly. To fight or not to fight? Of course not. If Yixian joined forces with Eternal Night City, then they were at an absolute disadvantage. Mu Su looked at Yixian. What enmity does Daoist City have with you? Yixian frowned. Don't you know? Mu Su's eyes narrowed. Know what? Yixian smiled. Let young Master Mu Chen tell you. Mu Chen. Mu Su hesitated for a moment, and then he turned around. Meanwhile, Mu Chen appeared, and he glanced at Yixian with a complicated expression. He didn't conceal anything and told Yixian everything. After knowing the ins and outs of the matter, Mu Su's face instantly turned extremely ugly. Mu Chen. He hadn't expected that this matter was caused by his eldest son. And that elder Yu, it was a conflict within the sect. If you have any enmity, you can look for heaven's hatred. Why should he look for Yixian, an elder Yu's son? What kind of trash is he? Actually, he was quite annoyed at this moment. Yixian wasn't an enemy of Daoist City. But now, Daoist City had forcefully turned him into an enemy. Moreover, it was because of an idiot like Elder Yu. It wasn't worth it. Of course, there was no turning back now. Even if Daoist City was willing to turn back, Yixian wouldn't turn back. If Yi Xian turned back now, then Eternal Night City would just ignore everything. Wouldn't that be a pain in the ass for Yi Xian? Mu Su glanced at Yi Xian. I never expected that another super genius would appear in this world. As he spoke, he glanced at Han Jiang. Congratulations. Han Jiang laughed heartily. This is an unexpected surprise. To Eternal Night City, this was indeed a pleasant surprise. They had already witnessed Yi Xian's terrifying strength. Such a monstrous genius was actually forced to Eternal Night City by Daoist City. Thinking of this, Han Jiang couldn't help but laugh. Mu Su glanced at Han Jiang and smiled. It's best to have the last laugh. Han Jiang smiled. Then let's see who will have the last laugh. Mu Su smiled. We'll wait and see. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian in the distance and turned to leave. The experts of Daoist City also left. After Mu Su and the others left, Han Jiang looked at Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and smiled. How should I address you? Yi Xian smiled. Yi Xian. Han Jiang was slightly stunned. Yi Xian? Yi Xian blinked. Senior, do you know me? Han Jiang said in a deep voice, yes. Yi Xian frowned. How is that possible? Han Jiang smiled faintly and did not speak. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, Defying One. Han Jiang nodded. After he came back, he said that he met a very strong monster, and that was you. At that time, I didn't think much of it. I never expected that you would come here. Of course, I didn't expect that young Master Yi would be so monstrous. As expected of someone who could fight a Defying One evenly. As he spoke, he glanced at the people of Eternal Night City and said angrily, What are you waiting for? Greetings, young Master Yi. Oh no, from now on, young Master Yi is the Deputy City Lord of Eternal Night City. Greetings, Deputy City Lord. Don't just stand there. Hurry up and salute. Everyone. Chapter 2053. Deputy City Lord. Everyone was slightly taken aback by Han Jiang's words. He became a Deputy City Lord just like that? They didn't think too much about it and bowed. They were all old foxes. How could they not understand Han Jiang's meaning? Of course, the young man before them was worth Han Jiang's effort. After all, Yi Xian had killed those Daoming realm experts like he was slaughtering chickens. His strength was too terrifying. Yi Xian was speechless. He had become a Deputy City Lord just like that? Han Jiang appeared before Yi Xian and said with a smile, My Deputy City Lord, let's go. Let's go to Eternal Night City. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Heaven Loath and God Eye suddenly appeared. Han Jiang frowned when he saw them. From Daybreak City? Yi Xian said hurriedly, My friend. Han Jiang laughed. So you're a friend of the Deputy City Lord. Then you're a friend of Eternal Night City. Deputy City Lord. Heaven Loath looked at Yi Xian. You've become a Deputy City Lord? Yi Xian nodded. Heaven Loath was speechless. At this time, God's Eye said, Brother Yi, after we learned that you were being pursued by Daylight City, we retreated from Daylight City. Now, Heaven Loath suddenly said, Yes, Daybreak City offered us 2-star veins, but we didn't accept them. God Eye's expression froze. He looked at Heaven Loath in shock. 2-star veins. Yi Xian glanced at Heaven Loath. The corners of his mouth twitched. This woman's appetite was too big. Eternal Night City probably wouldn't give them 2-star veins easily. After all, they were too precious. As expected, Han Jiang's smile faded when he heard Heaven Loath's words. Actually, he only valued Yi Xian. As for Heaven Loath and God Eye, while they were good, Yi Xian was better. If it was Yi Xian, he would be willing to give them 3 or 4-star veins, not to mention 2. After all, this was a super demon that was comparable to the Defying Ones. On the other hand, the expressions of the Dao Brightness Realm experts from Eternal Night City turned slightly unsightly when they heard Heaven Hateful. They were all 10,000-year-old monsters. How could they not understand White Vexation's intentions? If it was a monster like Yi Xian, Han Jiang would give him 2-star veins. After all, he was a super monster who could be compared to the Defying Ones. But what about Heaven's Loathing and God's Eye? If they could get 2-star veins just like that, what would they, who had been struggling in the city of Evernight for so many years, amount to? Some of the Dao Ming realm powerhouses had undisguised anger on their faces. Heaven Hateful's face darkened. She knew she had messed things up. She looked at Yi Xian with a trace of apology in her eyes, as well as a trace of worry. She was worried that Yi Xian would be angry and blame her for playing tricks. The surroundings suddenly fell silent, and the atmosphere became slightly awkward. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly grabbed Han Zhang's arm and smiled. City Governor Han, these are all trivial matters. Let's talk about it later. We're all family. There's nothing we can't talk about. What do you think? Han Zhang glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. Indeed. Let's talk about it slowly. Let's talk about it slowly. Let's go back to Evernight City. Back to Evernight City. They returned to Evernight City. Unlike Day City, Evernight City was gloomy all year round, and it carried an oppressive feeling. Yi Xian was actually quite curious about Day City and Evernight City, because his intuition told him that the two cities were definitely related. However, he didn't ask about it. Han Jiang dismissed everyone, and then he led Yi Xian's group to the city walls of Evernight City. Han Jiang smiled. Young friend Yi, I'll get straight to the point. As he spoke, he glanced at Heavenly Hateful and Heavenly Hateful. Both of you are at the Dao Radiance realm, and you're very outstanding. I should say that you're extremely outstanding. However, I can't give you 2-star veins. At least, I can't give them to you right now. Because just like Day City, there are certain requirements to obtain star veins. Those fellows from before have been struggling here for a very long time, and some have even struggled for over 1,000 years. However, they still haven't obtained star veins. If I were to give them to you as soon as the two of you arrive, then those fellows down below wouldn't be convinced. Heavenly Hateful nodded slightly. What I said just now was rude. I'm sorry. Han Jiang smiled. I can understand how you feel. Because I came from the Dao Radiance realm as well. As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. Young friend Yi, if you need star veins, then I can give them to you. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, let's do it according to the rules. Han Jiang heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. He could break the rules for Yi Xian, but it would make many others feel uncomfortable, and it wasn't good for the unity of Eternal Night City. Because he knew that if he gave Yi Xian star veins, then Yi Xian would definitely give them to Heavenly Hateful and God Eye. Of course, if Yi Xian used it for himself, then it would definitely not be like that. After all, Yi Xian's strength was here, so no one would go against it. Besides that, if Heavenly Hateful and God Eye obtained star veins in such a way, then they would definitely be ostracized in Eternal Night City. Yi Xian gazed at Heavenly Hateful and God Eye. Are both of you confident? God Eye hesitated for a moment and said, I'm not very confident. Yi Xian's face darkened. Heavenly Hateful suddenly said, if others can do it, then so can we. Yi Xian chuckled and then he gazed at Han Jiang. Let me make some calculations. I killed 10 Dao Radiance Realm experts just now. What other requirements do I have to fulfill in order to obtain a star vein? Han Jiang smiled. Our mission is different from Daybreak Cities. Besides killing 10 Dao Radiance Realm experts, we also have to kill a Dao Radiance Realm expert who's ranked in the top 20 of the divine rankings. Of course, that middle-aged man who led the group you killed just now was ranked in the top 20 of the divine rankings. Yi Xian smiled. In other words, I've already passed? Han Jiang smiled. There's another requirement, and it's to serve Eternal Night City. Yi Xian frowned when he heard this. Meanwhile, Han Jiang suddenly smiled. Of course, young brother Yi doesn't need that. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a spatial ring descended to Yi Xian. There just happened to be a star vein within it. Yi Xian didn't refuse and immediately put it away. Thank you. As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something and asked, what about the defying ones? Han Jiang looked up into the starry sky. They should be fighting Tianqian right now. Fighting? Yi Xian frowned slightly. They're fighting? Han Jiang nodded. As soon as he came back, he asked Tianqian to fight. Young brother Yi, are you interested? Yi Xian smiled. Of course. In fact, he also wanted to fight. He had reached a bottleneck, and only fighting could improve him. Han Jiang smiled. Then you might have to wait. Yi Xian was a little curious. Aren't you going to keep an eye on them? Han Jiang shook his head. Both of them are arrogant and won't let us follow them. Of course, both of us aren't idle either. We're both paying attention to the top experts on both sides. Whichever expert disappears, both of us will come forward to stop it. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. Han Jiang smiled and said, before this, neither of us could do anything to the other. But now, with your participation, under the power of embodiment transformation, we have the absolute advantage. Of course, I don't know if Daybreak City has any other trump cards. Yi Xian said with a smile, forget about them. City Governor Han, I want to enter into closed-door cultivation for some time. Han Jiang nodded, all right. Let me know if you need anything. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Meanwhile, Heaven Hater spoke abruptly, I'm sorry. Yi Xian gazed at Heaven Hater, what are you sorry for? Heaven Hater glanced at Yi Xian, you know what I mean. Yi Xian chuckled. He naturally understood that Heaven Hater had played a trick and wanted to use him to obtain a star vein from Daybreak City. Needless to say, such actions were very inappropriate. Yi Xian smiled, it's nothing. As he spoke, he glanced at them and said, now, both of you've joined Eternal Night City. Moreover, both of you joined Daybreak City before this. So, the people of the city more or less have different opinions about both of you. Of course, all of that is nothing. In short, remember not to cause trouble. But if someone tries to bully you on purpose, then don't hold it in. Actually, he was very clearly aware that rather than saying that Heaven Hater and Han Jiang had joined Eternal Night City, it would be more accurate to say that they were following him, Yi Xian. Han Jiang understood this as well. However, he was a smart man, so he didn't say anything about it. Heaven Hater nodded, I understand. Yi Xian continued, I can't give you the star vein. You have to fight for it. We have to rely on ourselves. Heaven Hater glanced at Yi Xian with a strange expression on his face. Yi Xian glared at Heaven Hater. What's with that look? Heaven Hater puckered his lips and didn't speak. Since she was in the wrong today, she didn't want to hurt Yi Xian's feelings. Yi Xian glanced at them. I'm going into closed-door cultivation. Both of you go familiarize yourselves with the city. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Heaven Hater remained silent for a moment before he turned around and left. Yi Xian returned to Xiao Ta and placed the star vein in Xiao Ta's body. He had to admit that with the appearance of the star vein, the spiritual qi in Xiao Ta's body became different. The spiritual qi was extremely dense. Yi Xian was a little shocked as he looked at the star aura that permeated the surroundings. No wonder so many powerhouses wanted star veins. The spirit aura of this star vein was different from other spirit auras. It was very pure. At this time, Yi Xian seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly asked, Xiao Ta, why don't you look shocked when I put the star vein in? Xiao Ta said calmly, why should I be shocked? Yi Xian frowned, this is the star vein. Xiao Ta was silent for a moment. Then he said, young master, you have to understand that Little White used to live here. Yi Xian didn't understand. What do you mean? Xiao Ta sighed softly. Little White is the ancestor of all spirits. With her around, any star vein is nothing. Do you understand? Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta continued, I, Xiao Ta, have seen all kinds of spiritual qi. Although this star vein is not bad, how can I be interested in it? Only someone like you who hasn't seen the world would go crazy for it. If it were me, I wouldn't even want a star vein of this level. Yi Xian's face darkened. Chapter 2054. Needless to say, Yi Xian often wanted to kill this Xiao Ta. He was too good at acting cool. Ignoring Xiao Ta, Yi Xian sat down cross-legged and slowly closed his eyes. The previous battle was delightful. When he used the green profound sword, the Dao Ming realm powerhouses were like ants to him, one sword for one. However, he could not underestimate the Incarnation realm powerhouses. Of course, he also wanted to fight with the Incarnation realm powerhouses. If Han Jiang had not stopped him, he would have fought with Mu Su. After a while, Yi Xian looked at the green profound sword in his hand and shook his head with a bitter smile. At this moment, he could finally understand the helplessness of his big brother. Invincible, that feeling was not particularly good. Because the current him wanted someone to defeat him. Only by being defeated could he find his own shortcomings and then change them. Invincible? This feeling was not comfortable. Yixian got up, shook his head and sighed. Xiaota, to be honest, I miss the days when I was beaten up every day. Those days, although bitter, were very fulfilling, and it made me want to improve. Not like now, invincible makes me lonely and empty. After a moment of silence, Xiaota said, Young master, is it fun to act cool in front of a tower? Yixian laughed and turned to leave. He decided to find Han Jiang for a spar. Daoming realm? He no longer had any interest in it. Now his small goal was to kill one incarnation realm with one sword. As soon as Yixian left Xiaota, Han Jiang appeared in front of him. Han Jiang's expression was grave. Yixian frowned slightly. What's wrong? Han Jiang said in a deep voice, Daoist city does not follow the rules. Yixian was a little surprised. What do you mean? Han Jiang's face was pale. I just received a signal from the Defying One. He is in danger. Yixian was slightly taken aback. Then he said, In danger? Han Jiang nodded. It must be Daoist city's doing. Yixian said in a deep voice, Did their people make a move? Han Jiang said solemnly, We have been keeping an eye on their experts. No one has left Daybreak City. Yixian frowned. In other words, they have other people? Han Jiang nodded. They still have experts that we don't know about. Yixian continued, What about us? We should have them too, right? Han Jiang shook his head. We didn't. Yixian's expression froze. Han Jiang smiled bitterly. I really didn't. Moreover, I still feel that this matter is a little strange because according to what I know, there are only a total of 6 embodiment transformation realm experts in Daytime City, and those 6 are currently in Daytime City. You must know, every time an embodiment transformation realm expert appears, it is basically not enough. Breaking through from the Daoming realm to the embodiment transformation realm, that movement is too big. Yixian said solemnly, What else did the Defying One say? Han Jiang shook his head. After he sent a message asking for help, we couldn't contact him anymore. You know his personality. If it was a one-on-one battle, even if he died, he would not ask for help from us. There must be other experts in Daytime City making a move. Yixian thought about it and said, You want me to go? Han Jiang nodded with a gloomy expression. Right now, we are all restrained by the experts of Daytime City. Anyone who leaves will be stopped. As he said, he looked at Yixian. Little friend Yi, you are now an extra person on our side. Only you can leave Daytime City. Moreover, Daytime City doesn't dare to stop you because we will restrain their current embodiment transformation realm experts. Yixian asked, Where is the Defying Ones? Han Jiang said hurriedly, The God War realm. That's an ancient battlefield. Our Evernight City and Daybreak City often fought there. Yixian looked at Han Jiang. Don't resist. As he said, he suddenly put his right hand on Han Jiang's shoulder and slowly closed his eyes. Think of the God War realm. Han Jiang was slightly stunned. He didn't think too much and began to think of the God War realm. A moment later, Yixian retracted his right hand. He opened his palm and the profound azure sword appeared in it. In an instant, he disappeared from the spot. Han Jiang was stunned. The next moment, his expression changed drastically. He found that Yixian had gone to the God War realm. Han Jiang was silent for a moment and said softly, This sword is good. Another day, I will ask little friend Yi to make some in bulk. This way, our Eternal Night City will play with Daytime City to death. Wonderful. Yixian appeared in the God War realm directly. As soon as he entered, he was stunned. This was because he found that this place was filled with the aura of dead spirits and the smell of blood. A normal person might dislike this aura of dead spirits and the smell of blood. However, he didn't dislike it at all. Not only did he not dislike it, but he even felt close to it. Yixian glanced around. This place was an abandoned continent. However, the space-time here was abnormally sturdy. The space-time density here was at least 10 times thicker than other places. This shocked Yixian. He had traveled through countless spacetimes, but this was the first time he had seen such a dense spacetime. Without thinking too much, Yixian slowly closed his eyes and scanned the surroundings with his divine sense. With his current strength, his divine sense could instantly cover the entire God War realm. Soon, Yixian frowned because he didn't find anyone. Was he not here? After a moment of silence, Yixian raised his head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. The next moment, he rode on his sword and arrived in the sky above the God War realm in the blink of an eye. Yixian glanced around and scanned the surroundings with his divine sense again. A moment later, he frowned again. He still didn't find anyone. Yixian said solemnly, "Could this defying walker have already been killed?" Saying so, he shook his head. He knew the strength of a defying walker. To kill this defying walker, it would take at least 3 unfettered embodiment realm cultivators to work together. In the same place, Yixian was silent for a moment. He looked at the starry sky around him and calculated in his heart. In the beginning, the defying walker and Tianqin must have fought in the God War realm because he found traces of battle below. In other words, the defying walker must have encountered something and left the God War realm. Escaped. Where would the defying walker escape to? As Yixian pondered, he looked around. The next moment, he rushed in one direction. This direction was the direction to Evernight City. In his opinion, if the defying walker really encountered an undefeatable expert and wanted to escape, it would definitely run in the direction of Evernight City. At this moment, Xiaoda suddenly said, "Young master." Yixian said, "What do you want to say?" After a moment of silence, Xiaoda said, "Forget it." Yixian frowned slightly. "What the hell?" Xiaoda said, "I don't want to say anything." Yixian was speechless. He did not talk nonsense with this Xiaota and increased his speed to the limit. God War Realm. Not long after Yixian left, the place he was originally at suddenly wriggled. The next moment, a man with disheveled hair emerged from the ground. The man's clothes were shabby and his hair was disheveled. At first glance, he looked like a beggar. The man looked up into the starry sky and frowned slightly. "That sword's aura." Saying so, his eyes suddenly flashed with a fanatical light. "Unknown expert, and a woman's aura, interesting." Saying so, he stuck out his tongue and licked his lips, his eyes obscene. "Women, strong women are the most fun to play with." Ha. At the end of the distant starry sky, Yixian flew on his sword. Soon, he stopped because he found that the space in front of him was pitch black. There was a battle. Yixian frowned slightly. He entered the pitch-black space and closed his eyes slightly. His divine consciousness directly swept out. After a while, he opened his eyes and disappeared from where he was. A ray of sword light flashed in this pitch-black space. Not long after, Yixian suddenly stopped. At this moment, he felt an extremely powerful aura. Yixian frowned slightly. At this moment, the space-time in front of him suddenly tore open. The next moment, a man rushed out. The person who rushed out was the Defying One's. It has to be said that the Defying One's appearance was a bit miserable. Not only was his body tattered and full of wounds, his right arm was missing. The most terrifying thing was that there was a pure gold arrow stuck in the Defying One's left chest. Seeing the appearance of the Defying Ones, Yixian was completely stunned. What happened to this guy? Why was he beaten so badly? Seeing Yixian, the Defying Ones was also slightly stunned. The next moment his face changed. "Brother, you're not here to spar with me, are you?" Yixian was about to speak, but the Defying Ones hurriedly said, "Brother Yi, now is not the time to spar. Let's spar another day, okay?" Yixian's face was full of black lines. "I'm already a member of Eternal Night City." The Defying Ones was stunned. "Eternal Night City?" Yixian nodded. "Yes. We're on the same side now." At this moment, the Defying Ones suddenly grabbed Yixian's arm. "Brother Yi, save me." Yixian, the Defying Ones was about to say something, but at this moment, the space behind him suddenly split open, and the next moment, a man in white walked out slowly. The man in white held a black bow in his hand. and behind him was a quiver with 6 arrows of 3 different colors. 2 were golden, 3 were black, and 1 was purple. And beside this man stood a man in a black robe and a woman in a purple dress. The man in the black robe held a sheathed long saber in his left hand, and his long hair draped over his shoulders. There was a deep saber scar between his eyebrows. As for the woman in the purple dress, she held a white spear in her right hand. She wore a veil, and her eyes were crystal blue, making her look very seductive. Seeing these 3 people, Yi Xian was stunned. All 3 of them were very young, and it was obvious that they were not from White Day City. And if they were not from White Day City, where were they from? At this moment, the man in white looked at Yi Xian, and the next moment, his eyes fell directly on the cyan profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. When he saw the cyan profound sword, he frowned slightly. In the distance, the defying ones beside Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Brother, did you come alone?" Yi Xian nodded. "Why, is there a problem?" The defying ones hesitated and then said, "Then we can escape." After saying this, he turned and disappeared into the sky. In the same place, Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Chapter 2055. He fled. Yi Xian was dumbfounded by the defying one's actions. He fled directly? Yi Xian looked at the white-clothed man in the distance, and the white-clothed man looked back at him. "You're not fleeing?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Fleeing? I don't know what fleeing is in my entire life." The white-clothed man nodded slightly. "Just now, he was just like you. He was so unyielding." As soon as he finished speaking, the man beside him suddenly charged forward and arrived in front of Yi Xian. In the next moment, he suddenly drew his saber and slashed. A saber light slashed down. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he used his thumb to lightly lift his sword out of its sheath. He didn't use the green profound sword. As soon as the sword was unsheathed, an extremely terrifying aura swept out and caused the entire starry sky to seethe. However, as the saber slashed down, Yi Xian's aura and sword aura were directly slashed into pieces. Bang! The sword light shattered, and Yi Xian instantly retreated 30 kilometers away. After Yi Xian stopped, he was completely dumbfounded. My opponent actually broke my aura directly? In the distance, the black-robed man suddenly held the saber in his hand with both hands. In the next moment, he took a step forward and slashed down with both hands. As soon as the saber slashed down, a 30 kilometers long saber energy suddenly slashed down from the top of Yi Xian's head. The moment the saber slashed down, it carried the momentum of a thunderbolt as if it wanted to slash the entire starry sky into pieces. It was extremely terrifying. The aura contained within it was even stronger than Yi Xian's aura and sword aura. When he saw this, Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a trace of seriousness in the depths of his eyes. Without giving it any further thought, he flicked his thumb again, and a sword suddenly slashed out. After this slash, another slash flew out. However, when Yi Xian slashed out a second time, the man in the distance slashed down once more. When he saw this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched, and he slashed out again. However, the man in front of him immediately slashed out again. Just like that, both of them struck out 8 times in an instant. Boom! Suddenly, an expanse of sword light and saber light shattered in the river of stars, and then the entire river of stars started to be obliterated. This part of the Milky Way could not withstand the power of the 2 of them. As the 2 powerful forces erupted, Yi Xian and the black-robed man were pushed back at the same time. Both of them were pushed back several tens of thousands of feet. When the 2 of them came to a stop, the starry sky for hundreds of thousands of miles around them had turned pitch black. After Yi Xian stopped, there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes, but there was more excitement. Battles could excite him. At this moment, the black-robed man slowly raised the long saber in his right hand. Boom! A black vortex suddenly appeared in the sky above the black-robed man. In the next moment, a bolt of divine lightning suddenly descended from the vortex and entered his saber. Rumble! The long saber shook violently. In an instant, the long saber was covered by the divine lightning and turned into a thunder saber. In the distance, Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. He stared at the hilt of his sword with his left thumb, and then he slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, the surroundings had suddenly fallen silent, and it was like he was the only person in the world. Calm his heart. The sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly started trembling slightly, and then it emanated a sword howl. The white-clothed man who led the group in the distance frowned slightly when he witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and then he raised his thumb lightly. A sword cry suddenly soared into the sky. At the same time, a sword came out of the pitch-black darkness. At the same time, a sword flashed through the pitch-black starry sky. The eyes of the black-robed man who stood in front of Yi Xian narrowed slightly, and then he raised his saber with both hands and swung it down. A strand of saber chi that carried lightning suddenly slashed down from above the black-robed man's head. It was a collision between sword and saber. Bang! The lightning saber chi slashed directly onto Yi Xian's sword. In an instant, the sword was enveloped by an expanse of lightning. But in the next moment, the lightning was torn apart, and then a sword shot straight towards the black-robed man. A trace of shock flashed through the depths of the black-robed man's eyes, and then he raised his saber to block it. Bang! The black-robed man was blasted 30 kilometers away. He just stopped when another flying sword slashed down towards him. A wisp of viciousness flashed through the black-robed man's eyes, and then he suddenly swung his right hand and slashed down with his saber. Bang! An expanse of light erupted in front of him, and then he retreated explosively once more. At practically the exact same moment, another sword slashed down towards him. The black-robed man's eyes narrowed slightly while the corners of his eyes twitched slightly. He held his saber vertically in front of him with both hands. Bang! The saber shook violently, and the powerful force it carried blasted the black-robed man back once more. However, this wasn't the end of it because another flying sword slashed down towards him. The speed of this flying sword was infuriatingly swift. The black-robed man was utterly unable to attack with his saber, and he could only defend passively. Even if he did attack with his saber, he could only do it in a simple manner, and he didn't have the time to utilize any formidable saber techniques. At the instant when they collided just now, he'd fallen into a slight disadvantage, and it was precisely this disadvantage that allowed Yi Xian to seize the opportunity to force him into a hopeless situation. The slightest carelessness would doom him eternally. In a short period of time, the black-robed man had retreated over 30 kilometers. Moreover, there were a few tens of scars from the sword on his body, and his entire body was dyed red with blood. However, he didn't dare slack off in the slightest because Yi Xian's sword was truly too swift, and the slightest bit of carelessness would cause it to pierce through his head. Just like that, the black-robed man retreated over and over again. At this moment, cracks had appeared on the saber in his hand. On the other side, the white-robed man and woman in a violet dress didn't show any signs of attacking, and they just watched with calm expressions. However, both of them frequently glanced at the green profound sword that hung on the right side of Yi Xian's waist. Right at this moment, the saber in the black-robed man's hand suddenly shattered into pieces. In practically an instant, a sword had instantly arrived between his brows. Right at this moment of life and death, the black-robed man's eyes slowly closed, and then a saber suddenly flew out from between his brows. Bang! At the instant the saber appeared, Yi Xian's sword shattered into pieces. Yi Xian frowned slightly when he witnessed this scene. Because that saber hadn't just destroyed the black-robed man's sword, it had even destroyed the other 3 swords behind the black-robed man's sword. Yi Xian gazed at the saber. It was thin like a cicada's wing, and it seemed to be translucent at first glance. Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly. What saber is that? It looks very formidable. The black-robed man stared fixedly at Yi Xian from afar. You're very strong. You forced me to use my heart saber. Yi Xian was slightly curious. What's a heart saber? The black-robed man frowned slightly. You haven't condensed a heart sword? Yi Xian shook his head. Nope. A trace of disbelief flashed in the black-robed man's eyes. With your strength, how is it possible that you haven't condensed a heart sword? Yi Xian smiled. Can you tell me what a heart saber is? The black-robed man glanced at Yi Xian. A heart saber is a saber that is condensed from one's thoughts. It's also the most suitable saber for oneself because it's a sword that is condensed from one's thoughts. Yixian said in a deep voice, "One's thoughts can also be condensed into a saber?" The black-robed man frowned again. "Don't you know?" Yixian smiled. "I don't have a heart sword. However, I have a sister sword." The black-robed man looked at Yixian. "What sister sword?" Yixian waved the green profound sword at his waist. "My younger sister forged this sword for me. It's called sister sword for short." The black-robed man glanced at Yixian's green profound sword, and he said in a deep voice, "This sword of yours is very extraordinary. However, it's not a heart sword in the end." Meanwhile, the white-robed man spoke abruptly. "Hey Yen, don't underestimate this sword." A trace of surprise flashed in the black-robed man's eyes when he heard the white-robed man, and then he looked at the green profound sword in Yixian's hand. This time, his gaze carried curiosity. In the distance, Yixian said with a smile, "Again." As he spoke, he suddenly charged forward and directly appeared in front of the black-robed man. A wisp of viciousness flashed through the black-robed man's eyes. He issued a command in his heart, and then the heart blade in front of him suddenly flew up and slashed down. Bang! This slash caused Yixian's sword to be directly slashed into pieces. Meanwhile, Yixian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Draw to decide life and death. A divine close combat technique. As soon as Yixian drew his sword, over 10,000 overlapped in an instant. After all, his current strength was different from before. Regardless of whether it was his strength or soul, they couldn't be compared to the past. Rumble. As soon as Yixian slashed down with his sword, he and the black-robed man, He Yen, instantly retreated explosively for over 30 kilometers. At the instant that Yixian retreated, a flying sword suddenly slashed towards He Yen. He Yen didn't attack, but the heart saber in front of him suddenly swept out. Bang! The flying sword was slashed into pieces. But right at this moment, Yixian suddenly appeared in front of He Yen. This time, he didn't utilize a flying sword, and he directly utilized the core sword domain. In an instant, an expanse of sword light drowned He Yen, and countless rays of sword light tore and slashed apart. In the distance, the white-robed man in the lead frowned slightly. However, he still didn't attack. Right at this moment, Yixian's sword light suddenly exploded. Meanwhile, Yixian had already retreated over 3 kilometers. However, as he retreated, numerous flying swords connected from head to tail and slashed towards He Yen in the distance. 7 consecutive swords. In the distance, He Yen, who was covered in injuries, suddenly roared furiously. In the next moment, he held the heart saber with both hands as he charged forward and slashed forward. "Remove the absurd." As soon as he spoke, a black dot suddenly appeared on the tip of the heart saber. This black dot seemed like black blood, and it was strange and ghastly. As soon as this black dot appeared, the heart saber suddenly trembled violently. In the next moment, an extremely terrifying force swept out from the tip of the heart saber. Bang! The first sword shattered, and then the second. In the blink of an eye, the 7 swords were directly shattered by the saber. Not only that, but Yixian was directly pushed back tens of thousands of feet by the saber, and in front of him and the black flame was a huge space-time abyss that was thousands of feet wide. This spatial abyss was 300 m wide and 30 kilometers long. This was the result of He Yan's forceful slash. Moreover, a powerful force was ceaselessly shattering space within this spatial abyss. In the distance, He Yen held the heart saber in his right hand while the blood within his body boiled madly. At this moment, the blood that flowed out of his body was actually black. In the distance, Yixian wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth, and then he said, "The power of bloodline?" He Yen held the heart saber in his hand as he walked slowly towards Yixian. "The bloodline of the fire god. Swordsman, you should be honored to die before the power of bloodline." P.S. Everyone, are you done playing Daddy for today? If you are, get it? Chapter 2056. Infernal God Bloodline. It has to be said that after He Yan displayed the power of his bloodline, his strength had multiplied in a short period of time. Not only that, there was also a faint black flame around He Yan. The flame was like black blood, emitting an extremely terrifying power. The space around him was constantly being burned by the flame. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, He Yan's blade was supported by the power of his bloodline. Yi Xian could no longer block it. From afar, Yi Xian looked at He Yan and sighed. Seeing Yi Xian sigh, He Yan stopped and frowned. "Swordsman, why are you sighing?" Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "I just want to have a fair fight with you." He Yan stared at Yi Xian and was a little confused. "Swordsman, aren't we having a fair fight? My brothers didn't help me." Yi Xian smiled. "That's not what I meant." He Yan looked at the Qingxian sword in Yi Xian's hand and said, "I know that your sword is not ordinary. You can use it." Yi Xian looked at the Qingxian sword on his waist and shook his head. "Not really." Finishing his words, he slowly walked towards He Yan. He Yan squinted his eyes and was a little more cautious. He had never underestimated Yi Xian, the swordsman. One had to know that he had always been suppressed by Yi Xian before he used the power of his bloodline. Who knew if Yi Xian had a trump card? He Yan was secretly cautious. At the same time, the blade in his hand trembled slightly. A powerful force gathered in the blade and was ready to be unleashed. At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes gradually turned blood red. The next moment, he gently pushed with his left thumb. Swoosh! A blood-red sword light flashed across the field. The power of his bloodline. Yi Xian was not pedantic. Others had already used their bloodline power, so of course he would use it. His principle was that if you don't use external objects, I won't use external objects. If you don't use your father, I won't use my father. The moment the sword light appeared, the man in white and the woman in purple frowned at the same time. Opposite Yi Xian, He Yan's pupils abruptly shrunk. At this moment, he could feel the aura of death. Moreover, as the blood sword approached, the aura of death grew increasingly dense. It had been a long time since he had felt the scent of death so close to his heart. He Yan did not choose to retreat, nor could he retreat. Because once he retreated, he would be crazily suppressed by Yi Xian's flying sword, and he would be in a passive position again. He Yan's right hand gripped the heart saber tightly. In an instant, his heart saber turned blood black. In the next moment, he held the saber with both hands and slashed forward. Breaking absurd. The saber fell. Boom! A saber light and a blood-red sword light suddenly exploded. The starry sky boiled. He Yan retreated tens of thousands of feet. The moment he stopped, his pupils abruptly shrunk. Because another sword was slashing towards him. He Yan forcefully swallowed the blood that had surged up his throat. Then he used his trembling hands to slash forward with the heart saber. Boom! The moment the saber fell, He Yan retreated tens of thousands of feet again. When he stopped, another sword slashed towards him. He Yan's pupils instantly shrunk to the size of a needle. He was about to attack, but he was shocked to find that the heart saber in his hands had shattered. It's over. At this moment, that was the only thought left in He Yan's mind. At this moment, when Yi Xian's sword was half an inch away from He Yan's forehead, it suddenly shattered and turned into nothingness. What replaced it was an arrow. The man in white had attacked. In the distance, Yi Xian turned to look at the man in white. The man in white had a calm expression. The competition is over. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly took out a golden arrow. In the next moment, he drew his bow and released the arrow. In the distance, Yi Xian gently lifted his thumb. The sword was unsheathed. Boom! A wave of sword light shattered, and Yi Xian's sword was directly shattered. In the next moment, the arrow was already in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He tilted his body slightly and easily dodged the arrow because it wasn't very fast. However, in the next moment, his pupils suddenly constricted because he realized that the arrow had appeared in front of him again. A strange arrow. Yi Xian reacted quickly and lightly lifted his thumb. The sword in the scabbard suddenly flew out and pierced the arrow. Boom! The golden arrow was directly blasted away. At this moment, another arrow arrived. Not only that, but a spear suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian's head. The appearance of this spear was truly strange. It only appeared a few inches behind Yi Xian's head before Yi Xian could sense this spear. An arrow and a spear. The woman in purple had attacked as well. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression instantly became extremely solemn. A hopeless situation. At this moment, he was directly in a hopeless situation. Because between the arrow and the spear, he could only choose to defend. And he knew that behind that arrow, there was another arrow. His current situation was similar to He Yan's. In the end, Yi Xian chose to defend against that arrow. He had no other choice. The sword was unsheathed. Boom. The golden arrow was directly blocked by his sword. However, Yi Xian was stunned because he realized that the spear hadn't pierced the back of his head. A mysterious force had blocked the spear. At this moment, a man appeared 300 meters behind Yi Xian. It was the Defying Ones. At this moment his right arm had recovered, and the injuries on his body had mostly healed. The Defying Ones raised his right hand and the tip of the spear turned in a strange way. In the next moment, it directly appeared in front of the woman in purple. The power of the Defying Ones. In the distance, the woman in purple's expression was calm. She raised her right hand lightly and then clenched it lightly. This time, the terrifying spear directly fell into her hand. Boom! The space around the woman in purple was directly annihilated at this moment, but she didn't retreat at all. Her expression was still calm. She had withstood the Defying One's power, but the space around her couldn't. The Defying Ones glanced at the woman in purple, and then appeared beside Yi Xian. "Brother Yi, are you all right?" Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "These three fellows don't care about martial ethics. They actually ganged up on me." The Defying Ones said indifferently, "Not only did they ganged up on me, but they also launched a sneak attack on me. They are even more shameless than you." Yi Xian turned to look at the Defying Ones, his face full of shock. "Are you targeting them? Why do I feel that you are targeting me?" The Defying One said seriously, "You are shameless, but you have a bottom line. They are shameless without a bottom line. There is still a difference." Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. The Defying One still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Stop, let's not discuss this topic anymore." The Defying Ones. Yi Xian looked at the man in white and the other two in the distance. "Who are they?" The Defying Ones shook his head. "I don't know." Yi Xian frowned. "You don't know?" The Defying Ones nodded. "I don't know where they came from. In any case, when I was fighting with Tianqin, these three fellows suddenly appeared and launched a sneak attack on me. If I hadn't run away quickly, I would have been dead." Yi Xian looked at the man in white and smiled. "You guys were recruited by Daybreak City." The man in white nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian frowned. "You guys are from Daybreak City?" The man in white shook his head. "No, we just took someone's money, so we are helping them out." Hearing this, Yi Xian and the Defying Ones understood. Damn. These three people were hired by Daybreak City. Yi Xian glanced at the Defying Ones. "Looks like Daybreak City is up to something big." The Defying Ones spoke in a low voice. "We have to go back." Yi Xian looked at the man in white and the other two. "Will they let us go?" The Defying Ones hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Brother Yi, I know you're very good at fighting. Why don't you stop them while I go back first? I'll bring some people over to save you once I return." Yi Xian smiled. "You'll bring some people over to collect my corpse after you return, right?" The Defying One's expression froze when he heard this. Yi Xian shook his head. Even though he was confident, it was absolutely impossible for him to fight three people at once, even if he used the green profound sword and his bloodline energy. The man in white strength was absolutely not inferior to him, the Defying Ones, and the woman in a violet dress. They were extremely strong, but He Yan wasn't weak either. Not to mention 1 against 3, even 2 against 3 would be quite difficult for them. In the distance, the man in white glanced at Yi Xian. "Our target is him. We won't stop you if you leave." Yi Xian asked hurriedly, "Really?" The Defying Ones looked at Yi Xian. "Brother, don't scare me." If Yi Xian left, then he would be beaten up, and he had already been beaten up just now. In the distance, The man in white nodded. Really? Yi Xian was slightly hesitant. The defying one's expression changed drastically. Brother Yi, tell me that you're not that kind of person. Yi Xian looked at the defying ones. Look, you're their target, so it's really inexcusable for me to stay. The defying ones hurriedly said, What inexcusable? We're on the same side. We're brothers from the same sect, and blood is thicker than water. Yi Xian said seriously, You shot my star vein in the past. Have you forgotten? The defying ones was stunned, and then he said, Brother Yi, that doesn't seem to be yours, right? I remember, it's the Imperial God. Saying this, he suddenly took out a storage ring and put it in front of Yi Xian, who was about to leave, and then said, Brother Yi, it was a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. I have no use for this star vein. You keep it. Yi Xian took the storage ring, and then he flew into a rage. What are you doing? The defying ones was stunned. Yi Xian said angrily, We're all from Eternal Night City. We should be in the same boat, but you gave me this thing. You're insulting me, don't you know that? The defying one's expression froze. Yi Xian said bitterly, We're brothers from the same sect, and blood is thicker than water. You actually used the star vein to measure our friendship? What kind of person do you think I, Yi Xian, am? I look down on you. I look down on you. The defying ones looked at Yi Xian dumbfounded. Brother Yi, are you on the same side as them, Yi Xian? Chapter 2057. The man in white said abruptly, It seems like you intend to interfere in this matter. Yi Xian looked at the man in white and smiled. This is my brother from the same sect, yet you're asking me to leave him alone? That won't do unless you pay me more. The defying one's expression froze when he heard Yi Xian, and he tugged on Yi Xian's sleeve. Brother Yi, don't be like this. I'm panicking. He really was panicking. If Yi Xian didn't do anything, he would definitely die. He couldn't fight the three of them on his own. The man in white gazed at Yi Xian, and he said after a short while, It's impossible to pay more. However, I can bury all of you together later. As soon as he finished speaking, the bow was drawn, and the arrow was released. Everywhere the arrow passed, space and time started burning, and then it was swiftly obliterated. In the distance, Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a trace of a solemn expression in his eyes. He raised his left thumb, and the sword in the sheath flew out. At this moment, he'd utilized the power of his bloodline, so this attack didn't just contain sword aura and sword aura, it also contained the power of his bloodline. Everywhere the blood-red sword passed, space and time were obliterated into nothingness. Bang! The golden feathered arrow was stopped by this strike. At this moment, a spear pierced straight down from the top of Yi Xian's head. When the spear was only a dozen inches away from Yi Xian's head, a mysterious force suddenly enveloped the spear. In the next moment, the spear vanished on the spot, and when it reappeared, it was already above the head of the woman in the purple dress in the distance. Not only that, the force contained within it was many times stronger than before. The purple-robed woman frowned slightly. She opened her palm and gently pushed upwards. In an instant, an invisible force blocked the spear. However, the deceived space-time above her head caved in like the bottom of a pot. It was extremely terrifying. Meanwhile, the defying one suddenly pressed his right hand down. Bang! The spear above the woman in a purple dress suddenly trembled violently, and a powerful force passed through it and smashed down. Rumble! The space where the woman resided had transformed into a strange vortex. However, right at this moment, she waved her right hand lightly, and then a violet barrier of light enveloped her. She was safe and sound within the violet barrier of light. Not only that, but the powerful retrograde force actually dissipated little by little when it came into contact with the purple light barrier. Seeing this, the defying ones in the distance frowned slightly and slowly clenched their right hands. Right at this moment, the woman in the purple dress made a grabbing motion with her right hand, and this grab directly grabbed onto the spear. In the next moment, she vanished on the spot. Chi! In practically an instant, the space in front of the defying adversary was suddenly torn apart. A spear tore through the air, and then it pierced towards the space between the defying adversary's eyebrows at lightning speed. The defying walker's expression was calm. He clenched his right hand tightly into a fist, and then he suddenly punched forward. A strand of formidable defying energy swept out from his fist, and in an instant he and the woman in a purple dress had actually switched places. Reverse space-time. Boom. The expanse of space in front of the woman in a purple dress had been pierced into an enormous spatial black hole. Meanwhile, she suddenly turned around and stabbed her spear forward again. However, the defying walker had switched places with her once more. The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. She didn't turn around, and she just stabbed her spear forward instead. Bang! An expanse of violet light suddenly erupted from the tip of the spear. Rumble! In an instant, the entire starry sky seethed while countless strands of starlight were obliterated. Meanwhile, the defying walker had transformed into countless afterimages that retreated backwards. He turned into countless afterimages as he retreated. When he stopped, the countless afterimages returned to his body, and the woman in the purple dress had already retreated 100,000 feet. She gazed at the defying walker in the distance, and then she vanished on the spot. The defying walker took a step forward, and he vanished as well. In an instant, countless afterimages appeared in that expanse of space. Xian withdrew his gaze and gazed at the white-clothed man in front of him. If it was a one-on-one battle, then the defying walker wouldn't lose to the woman in a purple dress at all. Of course, he wouldn't lose to the white-clothed man as well. However, the problem was that it wasn't a fair competition. It was a 3 against 2. That was disadvantageous to him and the defying walker. In the distance, the white-clothed man suddenly took out a black feathered arrow. But right at this moment, Xian suddenly flicked his thumb, and a flying sword slashed out. Of course, he wouldn't just stand there and wait for his opponent to attack. What was the biggest disadvantage of an archer? They were afraid of getting close to him. He wanted to strike first and gain the upper hand. However, his sword pierced through thin air. Because when the green profound sword slashed towards the white-clothed man, the white-clothed man took a small step to the left, and it was this small step that caused Xian's sword to miss. Not only that, but a black feathered arrow had already arrived in front of Xian. Xian lightly flicked his left thumb. Bang! A wave of sword light suddenly erupted in front of him, and Xian instantly retreated a few kilometers away. But he hadn't even stopped when that black feathered arrow came again. It was still that black feathered arrow. Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, the heavens and the earth suddenly fell silent. His heart was calm. He'd entered such a state when he fought He Yan earlier, and the might of his sword when he attacked in such a state was much stronger. Everything was clear when the heart was calm. Even though his eyes were closed, he was able to clearly sense everything about the arrow, and it even included the trembling of the feathers at the end of the arrow. Suddenly, Xian lightly flicked his thumb. A clear and melodious sword howl suddenly resounded. In the next moment, a ray of light slashed against the arrow. Bang! The arrow was forcefully stopped, but it didn't move back. But this time, Xian's sword didn't move back as well. The sword and arrow were in a stalemate, but the space around them was gradually being obliterated. The force of the sword and arrow had stopped. However, the space in the surroundings wasn't able to endure it. Right at this moment, the white-clothed man took out another black feathered arrow, and then a sharp tearing sound resounded. In the distance, Xian's expression was calm, and his thumb was on the hilt of his sword. When the arrow was a few meters away from him, he lightly flicked his thumb, and the sword in the sheath flew out. This sword was different from before. When it left the sheath, it was very calm, and it carried a sense of ease. This sword slashed against the arrow, and the arrow trembled violently before it was blasted 3 kilometers away. The white-clothed man frowned slightly when he saw this, and there was a trace of seriousness in the depths of his eyes as he looked at Xian. Change. Since the beginning of the battle, Xian's sword had been slowly changing, and it was a sign of a breakthrough. When he thought of this, the white-clothed man turned to look at He Yan. Are we here to make friends with them? He Yan was stunned, and then he shook his head. Of course not. The white-clothed man said, "Since you're not, then why aren't you attacking?" He Yan's expression froze. He hesitated for a while and then raised his hand. He raised his long saber and charged towards Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian frowned slightly. He was not afraid of He Yan. However, when He Yan charged towards him, another black arrow shot towards him. This arrow was different from the previous one. Everything in its path became illusory. He Yan, arrows. Off in the distance, Yi Xian frowned slightly. At this moment, he was a bit irritated, or perhaps it could be said that he was a bit anxious. Anxious would make him irritated, and irritated would make him unable to calm his heart. Very quickly, Yi Xian felt that his state of mind had changed. He was shocked. If he became agitated at this moment, it would be very dangerous. The man in white and He Yan were not ordinary people. At this time, it was already too late for him to change his state of mind. He gently pushed with his thumb. The sword was unsheathed. However, the power of this sword was much weaker than the previous one. When this sword touched the arrow, it was instantly destroyed. The arrow continued forward, piercing towards Yi Xian. At the same time, He Yan's saber was already above Yi Xian's head. Yi Xian suddenly unsheathed his sword and slashed. This was because He Yan was already in front of him. This was a close combat. If the flying sword could not directly destroy the opponent's power, then he would be the one at a disadvantage. Unsheathing the sword to determine life and death. As soon as the sword was unsheathed, a ray of sword light suddenly exploded in front of him. In an instant, the ray of sword light engulfed both of them. In the next moment, both of them retreated at the same time. Yi Xian retreated tens of thousands of feet. Not only that, there was a black arrow stuck in his left chest. The black arrow trembled slightly, crazily destroying the vitality in Yi Xian's body. However, at this crucial moment, the power of the bloodline in Yi Xian's body suddenly surged. Then, the power of the bloodline crazily resisted the power of the black arrow. Yi Xian was stunned. He did not expect his bloodline to have such a function. Without much thought, Yi Xian was about to pull the arrow out, but he was shocked to find that he could not pull it out at all. Yi Xian tried to use his aura and sword force to force it out, but it did not work. Just like that, the power of his bloodline and the power of the arrow crazily fought against each other in his body. In the distance, the man in white suddenly took out another black arrow. He looked at Yi Xian. "I know that the sword in your hand is not simple. Are you really not going to use it?" Obviously, he was referring to the green profound sword. Yi Xian looked at the man in white and said disdainfully, "I don't care about external objects." The man in white looked at Yi Xian and nodded, "You've got guts." As he spoke, he shot another arrow. Almost at the same time, He Yan appeared in front of Yi Xian again. He was faster than the arrow. Obviously, this was intentional. He was covering for the man in white's arrow. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly pulled out his sword and slashed. This time, he did not use an ordinary sword, but the green profound sword. This sword slashed out. Boom! A ray of light shattered and He Yan was directly sent flying. This time, he flew for tens of thousands of feet. When he stopped, his body was gone. Not only that, the arrow was directly shattered by Yi Xian's sword. In the distance, the man in white squinted his eyes. Behind him, the purple arrow in the quiver suddenly trembled. On the other side, He Yan looked at Yi Xian and said blankly, "Didn't you say you don't need it?" Yi Xian looked at He Yan and said seriously, "I lied to you. Are you angry?" He Yan's expression froze. "P.S. Asking for tickets. I exploded yesterday." Chapter 2058. Was he angry? He Yan glared at Yi Xian. He was obviously angry. Damn it. He said he would not use the sword, but he suddenly used it. He was caught off guard. In fact, he really thought that Yi Xian would not use the sword. After all, Yi Xian was a swordsman. How could he play such a dirty trick? However, he did not expect that this swordsman did not play by the rules. He was too careless. At this moment, Yi Xian's lips curled up. Then he raised his thumb. The green profound sword flew across the battlefield. He Yan's pupils shrank. He was shocked because Yi Xian's sword was aimed at him. He was a spirit now. How could he block this sword? At this moment, a purple arrow suddenly flew across the battlefield. The next moment, the purple arrow hit Yi Xian's green profound sword. It was a tit for tat. Boom. The green profound sword was forced to a stop. However, the next moment, the purple arrow was shattered. However, He Yan had already retreated tens of thousands of feet away. There was a huge distance between him and Yi Xian. Yi Xian's flying sword was terrifying. However, as long as he was further away, it would be less of a threat. From afar, the man in white glanced at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand and said softly, "It can actually break my Zisu. Good sword." Yi Xian glanced at the retrogressors and the lady in the purple dress in the distance. At this moment, the two of them were fighting back and forth. They were equally matched. Yi Xian retracted his gaze and looked at the man in white. Again. As soon as he finished speaking, he was just about to swing his sword. However, right at this moment, an unexpected event occurred. A ray of cold light had suddenly appeared at his throat. Yi Xian's hair stood on end. Damn it, there's still an assassin. Yi Xian was horrified. At this moment, it was already too late for him to draw his sword. He could only dodge. His reaction was also extremely fast. In the instant that the cold light appeared, he directly retreated thousands of feet away. However, it was too late. A stream of blood spurted out from Yi Xian's throat. At the same time, his body began to rot rapidly. At this time, Xiao suddenly said, "Young master, there are assassins." Yi Xian's face darkened. "Why aren't you waiting for me to die?" Xiao felt a little wronged. "I just realized it." Yi Xian was speechless. Right at this moment, the Defying One suddenly appeared by Yi Xian's side. He glanced at the surroundings and said, "Brother Yi, has that assassin attacked?" Yi Xian looked at the Defying Ones. "You know there are assassins?" The Defying One nodded. "That's right. My arm was cut off by him." "What, you don't know?" Yi Xian was furious. "You're also a scammer." The retrogressors. Meanwhile, the wound on Yi Xian's throat had healed completely. Although the saber had slit his throat and it was corrosive, he possessed the undying bloodline. So long as he wasn't killed, it would be very difficult for him to die. When he saw Yi Xian's injury recovering at a visible speed, the white-clothed man frowned. He hadn't expected that Yi Xian would be able to survive after being stabbed. After all, that saber had slit Yi Xian's throat. Moreover, it was extremely corrosive. This is a little troublesome. The white-clothed man's face sank. In the distance, the Defying One suddenly said, "Brother Yi, what should we do now?" "What should we do?" Yi Xian looked at the white-clothed man. Although he'd utilized the green profound sword, he still wasn't confident in his ability to kill the three of them and the assassin that was hiding in the dark. Because his intuition told him that the woman and the white-clothed man still had trump cards. The Defying One said in a low voice, "Brother Yi, why don't we flee?" Yi Xian said, "You'll cover our retreat?" The Defying One's face froze. Meanwhile, the white-clothed man suddenly opened his palm, and an arrow appeared there. This arrow was dark gold in color, but the tip of the arrow was blood red. Yi Xian glanced at the arrow, and then he suddenly vanished on the spot. At the instant he vanished, the green profound sword suddenly pierced through the center of the white-clothed man's forehead. "He's dead?" This sword strike had merely pierced through an afterimage. The white-clothed man's body was already 3 kilometers away. Yi Xian's face fell when he witnessed this scene. This fellow's speed had slightly exceeded his expectations. The white-clothed man suddenly drew his bow, and then an arrow tore through the surroundings. Bang! This arrow was like a torrent that swept through the starry sky. In an instant, wherever the arrow passed, an abyssal gorge that was almost 3,000 meters wide appeared in the starry sky. The Defying One's brows instantly knit together when he saw this arrow. He was just about to attack when a formidable strand of divine sense locked onto him. It was the woman in a violet dress. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. Bang! A strand of dazzling cold light suddenly erupted in front of him, and then an afterimage retreated explosively for over 30 kilometers. It was that assassin. Yi Xian glanced coldly at that assassin, and then he suddenly turned around, sheathed the green profound sword, and raised it lightly with his thumb. Following a sword cry, the profound azure sword flew out at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it had slashed the arrow. Bang! The arrow was forcefully stopped by the green profound sword. After a moment of silence, the green profound sword actually tore the arrow apart, and then the arrow continued forward and slashed towards the white-clothed man in the distance. The expanse of space where the white-clothed man resided was instantly torn apart by the green profound sword, but the white-clothed man had already retreated 3 kilometers away. Yi Xian's face sank when he witnessed this scene. The white-clothed man's speed had surpassed the speed of his flying sword. Under such circumstances, it was very difficult for him to approach the white-clothed man, and it was even more difficult for him to kill the white-clothed man. Such speed was practically undefeatable. As if he'd thought of something, the Defiant suddenly said, "Brother Yi, let's change our opponent." As he spoke, he gazed at the white-clothed man and said, "I'll keep him busy." Yi Xian gazed at the woman in a violet dress and said, "All right." He understood what the Defiant meant. Even though the Defiant couldn't kill the white-clothed man, he could keep the white-clothed man busy. Moreover, if he were to go against the woman in a violet dress, then coupled with his green profound sword, he had a very good chance of killing her. The woman didn't possess the white-clothed man's speed, and once someone chose to go head-on against him, Yi Xian, then that person would basically lose without a doubt. Unless that person possessed an existence that could go against the green profound sword. Right at this moment, the Defiant suddenly vanished on the spot, and his target was the white-clothed man. On the other hand, Yi Xian had vanished on the spot at practically the exact same moment, and his target was the woman in a violet dress. The woman in a violet dress frowned slightly. She didn't retreat. Of course, she couldn't retreat, nor did she choose to go head-on against Yi Xian, because she'd witnessed how terrifying the green profound sword was, and she couldn't resist it at all. She slowly closed her eyes, and then a violet barrier of light instantly appeared around her. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's sword arrived before her. Bang! The violet barrier of light shook violently, and then countless cracks appeared on it. At the same time, the woman in a violet dress was blasted 30 kilometers away by Yi Xian's attack, and a flying sword suddenly slashed towards her when she stopped moving. It was the green profound sword. The woman's eyes narrowed slightly, and then she suddenly pressed her hands down. As soon as she did, another violet barrier of light appeared around her. The sword arrived before her. Rumble! This time, the violet barrier of light shattered into pieces, and the powerful force of the collision blasted the woman over 30 kilometers away. However, she hadn't even stopped moving when Yi Xian's sword slashed down once more. Her pupils constricted. If she couldn't resist this attack, then her soul would definitely be obliterated. Right at this critical moment, a cold ray of light suddenly appeared in front of her. The assassin had attacked. The cold ray of light slashed directly onto Yi Xian's green profound sword. Bang! The cold ray of light shattered, and the sound of a dagger breaking resounded. At the same time, the woman in a violet dress was blasted over 30 kilometers away. When she finally stopped moving, her body had split apart, but it didn't shatter into pieces. However, fresh blood sprayed, and she was instantly covered in blood. The woman's expression became extremely solemn. Damn it! This fellow simply seems like a completely different person after he changed his sword. What the hell? The white-clothed man who was being restrained by the Defiance frowned slightly. Actually, the strength of Yi Xian's sword had greatly exceeded his expectations. He'd noticed the green profound sword as soon as he saw Yi Xian, and he'd sensed how extraordinary the green profound sword was. So, he'd been constantly on guard against the green profound sword. However, he hadn't expected that Yi Xian's strength would simply seem like a completely different person after he utilized the green profound sword. It was too abnormal. Yi Xian glanced at the woman whose body had cracked apart, and he was just about to attack. However, right at this moment, an afterimage suddenly appeared behind him. It was that assassin again. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword as if he knew where the assassin was. Bang! As soon as his sword descended, the space before him shattered into pieces. At the same time, a black shadow was slashed into a spatial abyss by Yi Xian's sword, and when Yi Xian was about to follow up with another attack, the assassin had vanished without a trace. Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly. The assassin had moved far away from him. The reason he was able to notice the assassin was actually because of Xiaota. But now, Xiaota couldn't sense the assassin's existence any longer. So, the assassin was very far away from him. However, so long as the assassin was within 3 kilometers of him, then Xiaota would be able to notice the assassin. Of course, he didn't dare to place all his hopes on Xiaota. After all, Xiaota was even more terrifying than his enemies when he wasn't reliable. The assassin hadn't approached him, so Yi Xian simply paid no attention to him. He turned around to gaze at the woman in a violet dress, and then the green profound sword suddenly returned to its sheath in his left hand. Right at this moment, space in the distance was suddenly torn apart, and then a man walked out from within it. Yi Xian frowned when he saw the man, and then he gazed at the defiant who had a slightly unsightly expression on his face. "You know him?" The defiant nodded. "He's Tianqin." Yi Xian's face instantly darkened when he heard this. "Another extraordinarily monstrous genius has arrived?" Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "Big brother, do you have any friends?" The defiant hesitated for a moment before he said, "I do." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Quickly call for help." The defiant said, "He's here." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he glanced at the surroundings. "Where?" The defiant gazed at Yi Xian. "It's you." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 2059. Yi Xian's face darkened, and he was extremely speechless. "Damn it! This defiant is such a scam." The defiant glanced at Tianqin and said, "Brother Yi, what should we do now?" Even though both of them were extraordinary geniuses, their opponents weren't weak either. Moreover, Tianqin had joined the battle as well. How should we fight them? The defiant was troubled as well. Right at this moment, Tianqin suddenly gazed at the white-clothed man. "Who are all of you?" Yi Xian and the defiant were stunned. "This fellow doesn't know these fellows?" The white-clothed man glanced at Tianqin but didn't speak. Tianqin fell silent for a moment before he gazed at the defiant. "Let's go." "Go." The defiant hesitated for a moment and said, "Tianqin, you wouldn't be playing any tricks, right?" Tianqin gazed at the defiant. "I didn't know that Daybreak City had asked them to come here. I know nothing about this." The defiant glanced at Tianqin. "I believe you." Because Tianqin hadn't attacked when he'd been ambushed just now. If Tianqin had attacked, then he might not have been able to escape. Meanwhile, the white-clothed man gazed at Tianqin. "Do you know what you're doing?" Tianqin gazed at the white-clothed man and spoke with disdain. "How could I not know what I'm doing? Do I need you to remind me?" The white-clothed man frowned slightly. "Your Daybreak City spent 6-star veins to hire us to kill him, yet you've come to help him now. Have you asked your city governor?" 6-star veins. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched, and he gazed at the defiant with a strange expression. The defiant was shocked when he saw the expression on Yi Xian's face. "Damn it! Brother Yi wouldn't have taken a fancy to those 6-star veins, right?" Tianqin fell silent. 6-star veins. That's a huge sum of money. Obviously, Daybreak City was determined to eliminate the defiant. Once the defiant was killed, then Eternal Night City wouldn't have the ability to go against Daybreak City. A monstrous genius like the defiant didn't just affect the current situation, it represented the future as well. Right at this moment, the space in front of Tianqin trembled slightly, and then a figure floated out. The person who came was the city lord of Daylight City, Mu Su. Mu Su looked at Tianqin. "This is the best time for us to destroy the Eternal Night City." Tianqin shook his head slightly. "Master, do you not believe me?" Mu Su sighed softly. "It's not that Master doesn't trust you, But if we carry on fighting like this, more of us will die. And now, there's one more person in Evernight City. At this point he glanced at Yi Xian. Yi Xian joining the Evernight City put Daybreak City in a more passive position. The city of Evernight was not in a hurry at all. As long as it developed steadily, once Yi Xian and the Defying Ones grew stronger, the city of Daybreak would be destroyed with a flick of a finger. Therefore, he had no choice but to act now. He had to destroy the entire Evernight City before Yi Xian and the Defying Ones fully matured. Mu Su looked at Tianchen again. I know you are proud and do not wish to kill the Defying Ones in such a way. But now, this matter concerns the future of Daybreak City. I hope you can consider the bigger picture and join hands with the God Yong mercenary group to eliminate the Defying Ones and Yi Xian. God Yong mercenary group? Hearing this, Yi Xian could not help but look at the white-clothed man and the others in the distance, feeling somewhat surprised. These people were actually mercenaries. Where did these mercenaries come from? Their strength was so great. In the distance, Tianchen was silent. Beside Yi Xian, the Defying One said in a low voice, Brother Yi, what should we do now? Yi Xian suddenly looked at the white-clothed man and smiled. So it's the God Yong mercenary group. How interesting. The white-clothed man frowned slightly. You know us? Yi Xian smiled. Do you know who I am? The white-clothed man looked at Yi Xian. I'm a little curious. Yi Xian smiled. I'm from the number 1 mercenary group. The white-clothed man's eyes narrowed slightly. Jiang Pan. Yi Xian laughed. Are you trying to trick me? When did Jiang Pan become the number 1 mercenary group? The white-clothed man glanced at Yi Xian and fell silent. Jiang Pan was actually the number 2 mercenary group. The reason he said that was to test the authenticity of Yi Xian. But Yi Xian actually knew that Jiang Pan wasn't the number 1 mercenary group. Could he really be from that mercenary group? Thinking of this, the white-clothed man frowned slightly. Seeing the white-clothed man's expression, Yi Xian relaxed inwardly. Damn it, you still want to trick me. I've tricked more people than you've eaten, so how could I fall for your trick? At this moment, Mu Su suddenly said, He's not from your place. The white-clothed man looked at Mu Su, and Mu Su stared at Yi Xian. He's from the great Emotion domain, he's not from your place. Yi Xian smiled. Ridiculous. Mu Su stared at Yi Xian and said, Don't try to fool around. We know exactly where you come from. Yi Xian laughed out loud. How ridiculous. You guys know my background very well? Then can you talk about my bloodline power? Mu Su's expression turned ugly. He really didn't know. Yi Xian lit up the azure profound sword. Then do you know this sword? Mu Su's expression turned even uglier. Yi Xian looked at the white-clothed man in the distance. The latter suddenly shook his head. City Lord Mu Su is right, you're not from our place. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't speak. The white-clothed man continued. You just want to use the number 1 mercenary group to scare me, but do you know that I know the leader of the number 1 mercenary group? Yi Xian smiled. Let's not talk about this, let's talk about something else. Originally, your goal was only to kill a Defying One, but now I'm added to the list. Don't you think Daybreak City should increase the price? The white-clothed man frowned slightly when he heard this, and he looked at Mu Su. We do indeed have to increase the price. Mu Su's expression instantly became extremely unsightly when he heard the white-clothed man. Increase the price. In order to hire the God Yong mercenary group, Daybreak City had given them 6 star veins. 6 star veins wasn't a small amount. Because Daybreak City only had over a dozen star veins now, and it was equivalent to giving them half of it. Another 6 to kill Yi Xian? Mu Su's expression was unsightly to the extreme. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Before your God Yong mercenary group kills someone, you will investigate the strength of your target, right? White Shirt looked at him. What are you trying to say? Yi Xian said seriously, Firstly, the strength of the Defying Ones is definitely beyond your expectations, right? The white-robed man was silent. A little. Yi Xian continued, Second, I wasn't your target, but now I'm involved. Besides, I'm honest. Li also surprised you, didn't he? The white-robed man looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian continued, If their strength and numbers exceed expectations, they will be given 6-star veins. As he said this, he looked at Mu Su with undisguised disdain. I really look down on your White Day City. You actually used 6-star veins to make him fight against 2 peerless geniuses. Don't you feel embarrassed? You should at least give me 20 of them. Mu Su angrily said, Yi Xian, don't try to sow discord and play such low-level tricks. Yi Xian shrugged, then looked at the white-robed man. The defying ones and I can't defeat you. You have more people, but if the 2 of us fight with our lives on the line, can you guarantee that you can escape unscathed? The white-robed man was silent. Yi Xian continued, once your God Yong mercenary group loses someone, at that time, your ranking will definitely change, right? The white-robed man looked at Yi Xian. Your mouth is sharper than your sword. As he said this, he opened his palm, and a spatial ring slowly floated in front of Mu Su. This is the deposit City Lord Mu Su gave us. Now, return it to City Lord Mu Su. We won't accept this job. Or, City Lord Mu Su can increase the price. If you can increase it to 20-star veins, we are willing to accept this job and kill these 2 people. City Lord Mu Su's expression was somewhat unsightly. White Robe, aren't you afraid of losing your reputation by raising the price like this? White Robe shook her head. It's not that we are raising the price, but City Lord Mu Su, the information you gave us was wrong. Let's not talk about the strength of the defying ones. In the information you gave us, there is no swordsman. But now, this swordsman has appeared, Mu Su said in a deep voice. I only want you to kill the defying ones, not the swordsman. This swordsman will act, and this is something you have to deal with yourself, right? White Robe looked at Mu Su. We had an agreement before, you will block the other experts of Eternal Night City, and this swordsman is also from Eternal Night City. If you can block him, we will kill this defying ones. But, you did not block him. Mu Su said angrily, our agreement was that my Daybreak City will stop the Eternal Night City's free transformation realm experts, and this swordsman is not free transformation realm. Yi Xian, who was at the side, suddenly said, but I have the strength of a free transformation realm expert. City Lord Mu Su, you are also an ambitious person, but you actually play this kind of word game, you are a bit too much. Too much? Mu Su looked at Yi Xian and said angrily, can you shut up? Yi Xian blinked. No. Mu Su stared at Yi Xian. His gaze was like a sword. At this time, White Robe suddenly said, City Lord Mu Su, although this person is not free transformation realm, he has the strength of free transformation realm. Now, there are only 2 ways. 1, you increase the price. 2, cancel the order. You choose. Mu Su was silent. Increase the price? 20-star veins. Thinking of this, Mu Su's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. And at this time, Yi Xian suddenly looked at White Robe. Do you accept the order now? White Robe looked at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian smiled and said, how about this? You help us kill this City Lord Mu Su, we will give you 6-star veins, and we will help you block all the free transformation realm experts in Daybreak City. Not only that, my Eternal Night City can also help you. As long as you kill him, the 6-star veins will be yours. Do you accept? Hearing this, Mu Su's expression instantly changed. P.S. Asking for votes. I exploded the day before yesterday. Chapter 2060. It had to be said that Mu Su was a little flustered at this moment. Once Bai Yi and the others accepted the order, Daybreak City would be in danger. Because once the white-robed man and the others accepted the order, Evernight City would definitely launch an all-out attack on Daybreak City. At that time, how could Daybreak City defend against these people? At this moment, Bai Yi shook her head. We refuse. Yi Xian frowned. Why? Bai Yi looked at Yi Xian. We will not accept orders targeting the previous employer. With that, he turned around and left. He didn't want to take any orders from his previous employer. Giving up on a deal wasn't something to be ashamed of, and it didn't break their principles. However, if they were to take on another job right after giving up, Shin Yong's reputation would be tarnished. Who would dare look for trouble with Shin Yong in the future? Mu Su instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Bai Yi and the others leave, and then he seemed to have thought of something. He glanced at Yi Xian before he looked at Bai Yi. I agree to the conditions you spoke of earlier. My Daybreak City is willing to offer 20 star veins to kill these two. Hearing this, Bai Yi stopped. On the other hand, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn it! Has Mu Su gone mad? In the distance, Bai Yi turned to look at Mu Su, and the latter spoke in a low voice. Bai Yi, my Daesun City is willing to offer 20 star veins. Bai Yi shook her head. It's too late. We Xinyong, give up on this order. Mu Su was stunned, and then he asked in a low voice, why? Bai Yi glanced at Mu Su and did not answer the question. He turned around and led the people of the God Yong mercenary group to disappear into the depths of the starry sky. Seeing this, Mu Su's face turned extremely ugly. The Defying One suddenly said, where did these fellows come from? Yi Xian said with a smile, go back and ask the Lord of Cold River City. As he spoke, he glanced at Mu Su. If you want to fight, then fight. You actually called for help. Despicable and shameless. Mu Su stared at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian looked at Tianqin and pressed his left thumb against the hilt of his sword. After a moment of silence, he chose not to attack. Yi Xian and the Defying Ones turned and left. In the distance, Tianqin also turned around and left after a moment of silence. Yi Xian and the Defying Ones returned to Eternal Night City. Within the Great Hall, Han Jiang's complexion was incomparably gloomy. I never imagined that Daybreak City would actually seek out people from that place. Yi Xian was a little curious. Where did the God Yong mercenary group come from? Han Jiang said in a deep voice, 6 realms. Yi Xian frowned. 6 realms. Han Jiang nodded slightly. His expression was somewhat solemn. It's an extremely terrifying place. It's very far away from us. If our people want to reach there, only the experts of the free transformation realm can do it, because they have to pass through countless space-time storms. Even an embodiment transformation realm expert would be in danger. I have experienced those space-time storms before, and they are indeed terrifying. If one is not careful, one's soul would be destroyed. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, what kind of existences are those people in white and the others over there? Don't tell me it's a younger brother? Han Jiang shook his head. Impossible. They are definitely top-notch geniuses and experts over there. There are definitely more embodiment transformation realm experts over there than here, but it's not to the extent that they are everywhere. However, the quality of the experts over there is much higher than here. Yi Xian thought about it, and then said, I suggest that we start a war with Daybreak City directly. Start a war. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Han Jiang and the Defying Ones were both stunned. Han Jiang said in a deep voice, start a war directly? Yi Xian nodded. Daybreak City has already staked everything on this one throw. They definitely won't give up. In other words, they definitely have a backup plan. Since that's the case, why don't we start a war directly and disrupt their rhythm? Han Jiang was silent. Start a full-scale war. That was very risky. Although they had the advantage, if they started a war directly, the outcome would still be difficult to predict. Because no one knew the true trump cards of both sides. Yi Xian continued, they have already started a war, which means they won't stop. Especially now, after I join Eternal Night City, they will be even more impatient. Because the longer it takes, the more advantageous it will be for us. As he spoke, he looked at Han Jiang. If you were the Daybreak City Lord, what would you do? Han Jiang was silent for a moment, and then he said, since the gap between the two sides isn't big, we might as well go all out. Yi Xian nodded. Before we left, that Mu Su was actually willing to use 20 star veins to kill me and the Defying Ones. What does this mean? It means that he is thinking the same as you, and wants to fight to the death. Even if we don't start a war, they will still start a war. Han Jiang was silent for a moment, and then he turned around, ask all the elders to come to the hall immediately. Not far away, a black shadow left quietly. Soon, all the experts of Eternal Night City arrived at the hall. As for Yi Xian, he left the hall. How to fight was something that Han Jiang and the others should worry about. At this time, the Defying Ones walked to Yixian's side, and he looked at Yixian. "Thank you." Yixian smiled. "Thank me for what?" The Defying Ones whispered. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to come back." Yixian blinked his eyes. "Do you still have star veins?" The Defying One's expression froze. Yixian laughed. "Just kidding." As he spoke, he took out a storage ring and placed it in front of the Defying Ones. This was the star vein that the Defying Ones had given him before. The Defying Ones looked at Yixian with a puzzled look. Yixian smiled and said, "I don't cheat my friends." With that, he turned around and left. In the same place, the Defying Ones looked at the storage ring in his hand and did not speak for a long time. Yixian returned to his own hall. He entered Xiaota, and then he sat cross-legged on the ground and slowly closed his eyes. In the previous battle with He Yan, Bai Yi, and the others, he had gained a lot, especially that state of meditation. When he entered this state, he found that his sword had become completely different. This was something that wasn't there before. Yixian opened his palm, and the cyan profound sword appeared in his hand. After looking at the cyan profound sword for a moment, he closed his eyes again. Meditation. At this moment, he once again entered that wonderful state. When his heart calmed down, he found that everything in the world had become clear. With a calm heart, everything was clear. Yixian quietly felt everything around him. At this moment, he suddenly found that when he looked at the world with his heart, everything had become a little different. At this moment, he felt that the world was more real. He could clearly feel everything around him, such as the water, the mountains, the surrounding air, everything around him, everything. People's lives were basically busy for food and clothing. How many people could calm down and feel the universe? In fact, the scenery on the road of life was very beautiful, but few people could stop to appreciate it. Of course, compared to the scenery, food and clothing were more important. In the case of not having enough to eat, everything was nonsense. At this moment, the cyan profound sword in Yixian's hands suddenly trembled. Clearly, it was resonating with him. Yixian suddenly stood up and looked into the distance. His thumb gently pressed against the hilt of the cyan profound sword. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly said, "Young master, don't do anything rash." Yixian smiled. "All right." As he spoke, he left Xiaota and arrived in an unknown galaxy. Yixian looked around him and then gently pushed with his thumb. The cyan profound sword pierced through the sky. In an instant, the galaxy that he could see was directly annihilated. Yixian smiled and opened his palm. The cyan profound sword appeared in his hand. In reality, he really wanted to try using his full strength. Whether it was the battle against Bai Yi and the others or this moment, he had not used his full strength. This was because he had not chosen to use the power of the heavenly realm and the heavenly realm. With the support of these two forces, that sword of his could be considered his strongest move. He did not try it now because if he did, it would cause too much of a commotion. Moreover, the power would be too great, and the repercussions would be too great. He was still quite close to Eternal Night City. At this moment, Heaven's Hater suddenly appeared by Yixian's side. Yixian looked at Heaven's Hater and smiled. "It's you." Heaven's Hater nodded. "The war is about to begin." Yixian nodded. Eternal Night City and Daybreak City are about to make a decision. Heaven's Hater looked at Yixian. "You're on Eternal Night City's side?" Yixian nodded. Heaven's Hater nodded. "I understand." Yixian smiled. "This is a crisis, but it is also an opportunity." Heaven's Hater glanced at Yixian. "I understand." Just as Yixian was about to speak, the Defying One appeared. He looked at Yixian and said, "We have to go." Yixian smiled. "Are you ready for the war?" The Defying One nodded. Yixian asked, "Is there any movement from Daybreak City?" The Defying One shook his head. "Nothing." Yixian frowned. "Something's wrong." The Defying One was stunned. "What's wrong?" Yixian said, "Let's go." With that, he disappeared with the Defying One and Heaven's Hater. When they returned to Eternal Night City, Han Jiang had already gathered all the top experts in Eternal Night City. Obviously, they were going to fight to the death with Daybreak City. Seeing Yi Xian, Han Jiang smiled. We're ready to fight. Yi Xian said, just now, the Defying One said there was no movement from Daybreak City. Is that right? Han Jiang nodded. I also feel that something's wrong. Logically speaking, they should know that we're going to attack them. But they didn't do anything. It's abnormal. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. They must have a backup plan. Han Jiang nodded. They must have a backup plan. I just don't know what it is. Yi Xian looked at Han Jiang. Do we have a backup plan? Han Jiang smiled. Of course. A force that has been passed down for so many years must have some trump cards. Moreover, we have you this time. Our chances of winning are high. However, we can't be careless. Daybreak City has been passed down for so many years. They must have a trump card that we don't know about. Anyway, let's fight first. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Just as he was about to speak, an old man suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The old man said in a low voice, City Lord, all the powerhouses of Daybreak City are charging towards Evernight City. They attacked first? Everyone in the surroundings frowned when they heard this. Chapter 2061. Something was not right. Han Jiang and the others frowned tightly. The other party actually took the initiative to charge at them. Han Jiang looked at Yi Xian. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, There must be reinforcements. At this point he looked at Han Jiang. How many star veins do we have now? Han Jiang hesitated for a moment before he said, 13. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian shook his head. It's too late. It's too late to find reinforcements now. Han Jiang's expression turned ugly. That Mu Su must have used all the star veins in Daybreak City to seek outside help. Yi Xian said softly, If we succeed in destroying the city of Evernight, the dozen or so star veins will be worth it, won't it? Han Jiang looked at Yi Xian. Little friend Yi, in your opinion, what should we do now? Yi Xian smiled and said, What else can I do? Of course it's a fight. Han Jiang was stunned for a moment, and then he laughed. Then let's fight. Fight. The sound was like thunder, shaking the heavens. In the city, countless warriors of the city of Evernight roared together. At this time, several powerful auras came crashing down from the sky above Evernight City. Mu Su and the others had arrived. On the city wall, Han Jiang looked at Mu Su, who was in the lead, and said with a smile, City Lord Mu Su, I didn't expect you guys to come first. Mu Su said indifferently, We'll have to fight sooner or later. Why don't we put an end to it today? Han Jiang nodded. You're right. Mu Su raised his right hand and pressed it forward. Kill. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, the group of Daybreak City experts behind him rushed towards Evernight City. The battlefield was the city of Evernight. Han Jiang's eyes flashed with viciousness. Kill. As the sound of his voice faded, countless experts from the Evernight City soared into the sky, heading straight for Mu Su and the others. In the city, Yi Xian looked at the Defying Ones, while the Defying Ones looked at the distant horizon. There, Tianchen was looking at him. After a moment of silence, the Defying One said, Brother Yi, it's up to you now. As soon as he finished speaking, he shot into the sky and headed straight for sky dust. On the city wall, Yi Xian looked at Mu Su, who was in the distance, and the latter was looking at him as well. Yi Xian smiled, then turned around and disappeared into the horizon. Gone? Seeing this, Mu Su frowned slightly. After a moment of silence, Mu Su looked at Han Jiang and said, Han Jiang, although you and I have fought over the years, there has never been a clear winner. Why don't we decide the winner today? Han Jiang smiled and said, As you wish. With that, the two of them disappeared on the spot. On the other side, Yi Xian immediately concealed himself. His intuition told him that something was wrong. Daybreak City must have found reinforcements, and he had hidden himself to find that reinforcements. In the dark, Yi Xian looked around but found nothing. Right at this moment, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. He suddenly turned around, and as he did, a fist mark flashed towards him. Yi Xian raised his thumb lightly and the green profound sword flew out. Bang! A wave of sword light suddenly erupted in front of Yi Xian. In an instant, an afterimage was sent flying thousands of feet away. When the afterimage came to a stop, it was a young man. The man was wearing a tight black robe and a pair of black and gold arm guards on his arms. Yi Xian looked at the young man and said in a low voice, "Xiao Ta, why didn't you warn me that someone was approaching?" Xiao Ta said in a low voice, "You didn't ask me." Yi Xian's face froze. Right at this moment, the black-robed man sized Yi Xian up, and then he sneered, "You're that swordsman." Yi Xian frowned slightly, "You know me?" The black-robed man looked at Yi Xian, "I heard Bai Yi and the others didn't join forces to kill you." Yi Xian was about to speak when a wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of the black-robed man's mouth. "Bai Yi and the others are too weak. They can't even deal with trash like you. To think they're ranked third in the mercenary group." Right at this moment, Yi Xian raised his thumb lightly. The green profound sword was suddenly unsheathed, and a blood-red sword light tore through the battlefield at an extremely swift speed. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived before the black-robed man. The black-robed man's eyes narrowed slightly, and he raised his right arm to block. Bang! Along with an explosion, the bracer on the black-robed man's right arm exploded into pieces, and he was instantly pushed back thousands of meters. When he stopped, his right arm was directly shattered. Yi Xian glanced at the black-robed man who was slightly stunned, and he frowned slightly. "So weak? Why are you so weak? Can you be a little stronger? You're so weak that I don't even have the mood to draw my sword." In his body, Xiao Ta sighed softly. "This man is too much. He actually dares to verbally attack Little Master. Damn it, if it's in terms of verbal attacks, I'm afraid even 3 strikes wouldn't be a match for Little Master. No one can defeat a shameless person with verbal attacks." When he heard Yi Xian's words, the black-robed man's face instantly turned livid with rage, and he glared fixedly at Yi Xian. "How dare you humiliate me?" A wisp of disdain arose on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth. "Humiliate you? Do you think you're worthy? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? Are you worth it for me to humiliate you?" The black-robed man's eyes were scarlet red. "Yi Xian." Yi Xian laughed coldly. "Are you a dog? Do you only know how to bark? Come, I beg you to kill me." The black-robed man suddenly roared furiously. In the next moment his figure leaped up and charged towards Yi Xian. As he charged, a strand of formidable force swept towards Yi Xian like a torrent, and in an instant, the entire starry sky seethed. Yi Xian lightly flicked his thumb. A sword howl resounded, and then a sword flashed through the surroundings. Bang! A deafening explosion resounded in the distance, and then the black-robed man was instantly pushed over 30 kilometers back. This time, only his soul remained when he stopped moving. At this moment, the black-robed man was stunned. Yi Xian suddenly spoke with pain. "My God! Why are you so weak? Why are you so weak?" The black-robed man was speechless. Yi Xian suddenly shook his head and sighed, and then he turned around and left. The black-robed man was slightly stunned. Why isn't he attacking? Suddenly Yi Xian stopped moving. "You're too weak. Too weak. Such a weak person like you isn't worthy of dying by my sword. If I were you, I'd choose to buy a piece of tofu and kill myself. I'm not afraid of living if I'm so weak." As soon as he finished speaking, he started walking towards the distance. The black-robed man behind him suddenly roared furiously like a wild beast. "Damnable swordsman! How dare you humiliate me? You!" Yi Xian suddenly stopped moving, and then he turned around to look at the black-robed man. "Come over and hit me. I beg you to come over and kill me. I really want to die." The black-robed man gazed at Yi Xian as if he was looking at a devil, and even his soul was trembling. Yi Xian shook his head slightly. "I won't speak to you from now onward. You're so weak that you don't have the right to speak to me. I don't speak to trash. Thank you." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Xiao Ta was speechless. The black-robed man was on the verge of going mad. "You can't humiliate me like that. Who can endure it? Anyone with a little bit of courage wouldn't be able to endure it." The black-robed man directly charged towards Yi Xian. All he wanted to do now was to kill Yi Xian, or even perish together with Yixian. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of the black-robed man. She flicked her sleeves, and the black-robed man was directly blocked by a mysterious force. The woman wore a simple cotton dress, and her long hair draped behind her. She had a beautiful face, and her body exuded a faint fragrance. On her waist hung a small white pouch with a small Ning character on it. The black-robed man glared at the woman angrily. "Ning Ning, don't you dare stop me." The woman named Ning Ning suddenly waved her right hand lightly. Smith. The black-robed man was directly sent flying by this slap. When he stopped, his soul was completely illusory and almost transparent. At this moment, the black-robed man sobered up. Of course, he also panicked. Just now, he had lost his rationality and forgotten about life and death. Now that his mind was clear, he began to fear death again. Ning Ning glanced coldly at the black-robed man, then turned to look at Yixian, who had stopped in his tracks. "Swordsman." Yixian sized up Ning Ning, then smiled. "Are you the #1 mercenary corps or Riverside?" Ning Ning looked at Yixian. "Riverside." Yixian nodded slightly. "Let's cut the crap. It's obvious that you've been dragged here by Daybreak City to kill me. Since you're here to kill me, do you choose to fight one-on-one, or do we choose to fight as a group? If it's one-on-one, we'll fight one-on-one. If it's a group, then I'll call for reinforcements." Ning Ning stared at Yixian, not saying a word. Yixian frowned. "Why? Is it hard to choose?" Ning Ning suddenly said, "Who are you?" Yixian was struck dumb. Then he burst out laughing. Ning Ning frowned slightly. "What are you laughing at?" Yixian looked at Ning Ning, and a trace of ridicule appeared on the corner of his mouth. "You don't even know who I am, yet you dare to come and kill me. Is your Riverside mercenary corps full of idiots?" Ning Ning's eyes narrowed, and she flicked her sleeve. In an instant, the space-time in front of her rippled, and a powerful force passed through countless space-time and slashed towards Yixian. An extremely terrifying force. In the distance, Yixian lightly pushed with his thumb. The green profound sword flew out. With this sword, the space-time in front of Yixian was directly torn apart, and what was torn apart was Ning Ning's strength. Ning Ning frowned slightly when she saw this scene. Yixian looked at Ning Ning and said with ridicule, "Do you know why White Robe abandoned him?" Ning Ning looked at Yixian. "I'm really curious." Yixian opened his palm, and the green profound sword suddenly flew before Ning Ning. "Woman, take a good look at this sword for me, and then think about whether your lowly Six Realms world has a divine weapon of this level." Lowly Six Realms world? Ning Ning frowned slightly, and she glanced coldly at Yixian, and then looked at the green profound sword in front of Yixian. She hesitated for a moment, and then she grasped the green profound sword. The moment she grasped the green profound sword, her expression changed drastically, and she subconsciously let go of it. At this moment, her eyes were filled with horror. She sensed an extremely terrifying, unknown existence in the sword sect. Ning Ning looked up at Yixian. "Who the hell are you?" Yixian said with ridicule, "Who am I?" Xiaota suddenly said, "You're the strongest second generation. The only one." Yixian. P.S. Asking for votes? I exploded 3 days ago. I have the confidence to ask for votes. Chapter 2062. The Strongest Second Generation. Hearing Xiaota's words, Yixian's face darkened. At this time, Nanning asked again, "Who are you?" Yixian looked at Nanning and smiled. "Guess." Hearing Yixian's words, the girl named Nanning frowned. Damn it, how could she guess? In the distance, Yixian didn't make a move. He didn't because he felt several strange auras. These auras were extremely powerful, 2 of them even stronger than the free will realm. Obviously, there were people from the Riverside mercenary group in the dark. He wasn't afraid of one-on-one, but a group fight wouldn't be so fun. Moreover, he always believed that the problem couldn't be solved with fists. In this world, there must be love. In the distance, Nanning was silent. At this moment, she was in a dilemma. She was confident that she could kill the lone Yixian. However, she was a little worried because the man in front of her wasn't an ordinary person. Especially that sword. Just now, when she touched that sword, a trace of fear arose from the depths of her heart. If she killed the man in front of her, there would be great karma. But if she didn't kill him, those 20-star veins, 20-star veins. That was enough to raise the strength of the Riverside mercenary group to another level. Moreover, the Riverside mercenary group had never given up. She didn't want to. At this moment, a young man suddenly appeared beside Nan Ning. The man looked at the distant Yixian. You have to make a decision. After a moment of silence, Nanning looked at Yixian. If you are willing to join the Riverside mercenary group, not only can we turn enemies into friends, but the Riverside mercenary group can also help you destroy the Daylily city. Hearing this, the young man looked at Nan Ning, stunned. Nan Ning kept staring at Yixian, her expression calm. In the distance, Yixian shook his head. I refuse. Nan Ning narrowed her eyes. Are you sure? Yixian smiled. Yes, because I will not accept threats. If you want to fight, I will accompany you at any time. He didn't panic. As long as the Riverside mercenary group didn't participate in the battle, Evernight City wouldn't lose to Daybreak City. The one who should be anxious was Daybreak City. Meanwhile, Nan Ning suddenly said, Let's go. With that, she turned around and left. The young man by her side was slightly stunned and puzzled, but he didn't ask any questions. He turned around and left. In the surroundings, the auras hidden in the dark also disappeared. In the distance, Yixian glanced at Ning and the others who were leaving, then turned and left. On the other side, the young man walked to Ning's side. Nen Ning, you, Nen Ning said in a light voice. If he agreed to join our Riverside, then I would surely kill him. However, he didn't agree. The young man was puzzled. But Nan Ning's expression was calm. If he chooses to join us, it proves that he's afraid of us. If he's afraid of us, it means that the power behind him is ordinary. But what does it mean that he chose to refuse to join us under those circumstances? It means that he doesn't fear us at all? When she spoke up to hear, she raised her head to look at the distant secrets of the heavens and said softly, No wonder Bai Yi gave up. The young man sighed. What a pity about those 20-star veins. Nanning nodded. It's indeed a pity. Her heart ached at the thought of those 20-star veins. The young man suddenly said, Are we going back? Nanning shook her head. As she spoke, she turned around and said, We can't come here for nothing. Yixian returned to Eternal Night City. At this moment, the sky above Eternal Night City had become a battlefield. Both sides fought fiercely. However, Eternal Night City had the upper hand. After all, this was Eternal Night City. At this moment, the distant Daybreak City Lord Mu Su suddenly stopped. He looked at Yixian, his eyes filled with disbelief. How are you still alive? Yixian looked at Mu Su and said with a smile, I killed all your mercenaries. Bullshit. Mu Su suddenly roared, How could you kill them? They are the second strongest mercenary group in the 6 realms. With your strength, it's impossible to kill them. Yixian said with a smile, How do you know that I have no men? Mu Su stared at Yixian. Who are you? Yixian suddenly looked at Hanjiang. Hanjiang City Lord, stall him. Hanjiang nodded. Okay. As his voice fell, he directly rushed towards Mu Su. Almost at the same time, Yixian gently raised his thumb, and the profound green sword suddenly flew out from his scabbard. In the distance, the head of a Dao Ming realm expert from Daybreak City flew out. Blood gushed out like a fountain. It was extremely bloody. Mu Su's eyes almost split apart from rage when he saw this scene. Yixian ignored him and directly disappeared. The next moment, another Dao Ming realm expert from Daybreak City died. With Yixian's participation in the battle instantly became one-sided. Because Yixian had no opponent. Under the power of embodiment transformation, no one could take a single strike from Yixian. In a short period of time, Eternal Night City had completely suppressed the Daybreak City experts in the distance. In the sky, Mu Su's expression was extremely ugly. However, at this moment, he had no ability to change anything. He could only watch as countless Daybreak City experts were killed. However, the experts of Daybreak City were unyielding, and not a single one of them chose to flee. All of them were fighting to the death. However, Eternal Night City didn't show any mercy as well. Yixian didn't show any mercy as well. It was extremely foolish to show mercy to one's enemies. Because if Daybreak City was given a chance, then they wouldn't hesitate to annihilate him. Shrill cries resounded incessantly as more and more experts of Daybreak City perished. Suddenly, some experts of Daybreak City had actually chosen to detonate themselves with the intention of taking the experts of Eternal Night City down with them. However, the experts of Eternal Night City didn't retreat at all when facing these experts of Daybreak City who were unafraid of death. The experts of Daybreak City gradually grew fewer and fewer. It didn't take long for the battle to end. At this moment, the ground outside Eternal Night City was covered in the corpses of the experts of Daybreak City. Their blood had dyed the ground bright red, and the air was suffused with the nauseating smell of blood. Only 2 people remained alive, and it was the city governor of Daybreak City and Tianqin. Mu Su had been surrounded by the experts of Eternal Night City. Mu Su stared blankly at the scene below him, and he seemed as if he'd lost his soul. We've lost. Daybreak City, who'd staked everything on a single throw, had lost in the end. As if he'd thought of something, Mu Su suddenly turned around and gazed into the distance. Zheng'an, the space in the distance trembled slightly, and then a woman walked out. It was Nanning. Mu Su suddenly roared like a wild beast when he saw Nanning. Zheng'an, where's your professionalism? What happened to killing Yixian and annihilating Eternal Night City? Actually, he didn't hate Yixian because he and Yixian were enemies to begin with, and it was only natural for them to kill each other. What he truly hated was Jiang Pan. It was Jiang Pan who went back on his word that caused Daybreak City to suffer such a crushing defeat. Nanning gazed silently at Mu Su. Mu Su stared fixedly at Nanning. Why? Nanning shook her head slightly. The information you gave us was wrong. He isn't just a monster. There's someone behind him. Although 20 star veins is a lot, his life is far more than 20 star veins. Hearing this, Mu Su was stunned. The next moment, he turned to look at Yixian in the distance. Who the hell are you? Han Jiang and the others also looked at Yixian. They had to admit that they were also quite curious about Yixian's background. Who the hell was this guy? Nanning also looked at Yixian. Yixian smiled faintly. Everyone, don't be curious about my identity. I'm just an ordinary person who was abandoned by my father. Oh no, I mean an ordinary person who was left to fend for himself. Mu Su suddenly asked, Who is your father? Yixian smiled. City Lord Mu Su, I think we shouldn't discuss this anymore. Mu Su took a deep look, and in the next moment, he disappeared from the spot. He didn't escape. He didn't attack Yixian either. Instead, he attacked Nanning. Obviously, he really hated Nanning and the others. If Nanning and the others hadn't suddenly betrayed him, then Daybreak City wouldn't have suffered such an outcome. Han Jiang was slightly stunned when he saw Mu Su attack Nanning. He naturally didn't stop Mu Su because he wished for nothing more than for Mu Su to fight Nanning and the others to the death. Nanning gazed at Mu Su with a calm expression. Right when Mu Su arrived 300 m away from Nanning, the space there suddenly split apart, and then an afterimage flashed by. Mu Su's pupils constricted. He didn't stop, and he swiftly punched with his right fist. At the instant he punched forward, the space in an area of a few hundreds of thousands of kilometers trembled violently. At this moment, the afterimage suddenly became illusory, and in the next moment, a fist suddenly blasted towards Mu Su. Rumble! The fist suddenly shattered into pieces, and the afterimage instantly retreated by over 10 kilometers. Meanwhile, a ray of cold light suddenly appeared behind Mu Su. Mu Su's pupils constricted, and then he swiftly turned around and raised his arms to block it. Bang! The ray of cold light shattered into pieces, and then Mu Su instantly retreated by over 1 kilometer. As soon as he stopped moving, a fine silver thread suddenly flew out from the expanse of space behind him. Mu Su turned around once more, pressed his palms together, and then pressed them forward. Rumble! The space in front of him instantly caved down. The fine silver thread shattered into nothingness. At the same time, a powerful force swept towards Nanning. At this moment, Nanning suddenly took a step forward, and with this step, he arrived directly above Musu's head. In the next moment, he pressed his fingers together and lightly pointed downwards. A wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through Musu's eyes. Die! As soon as he finished speaking, he moved forward instead of retreating and punched upwards. He went head-on against her. Bang! Meanwhile, the world they resided in was suddenly obliterated. In the next moment, Musu's pupils constricted because his entire right arm had been blasted into nothingness. After that, Nanning's right hand pressed down onto his head, and then she clawed lightly in an instant. Everyone watched as Musu's head was clawed up into the air, and blood sprayed out like a fountain. The surroundings were silent to the point a falling needle could be heard. Chapter 2063. Kill him. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at Nanning. Needless to say, Yixian was quite shocked because Musu's strength was extremely terrifying. Before Nanning attacked, 3 top-rate experts had attacked Musu, but they hadn't been able to kill Musu. Obviously, the experts at the embodiment transformation realm weren't weak. However, Nanning's strength surprised him. Nanning's strength had slightly exceeded his expectations. Han Jiang and the others gazed at Nanning with a trace of fear in their eyes. The strength of this riverside mercenary group from the 6 dimensions isn't just ordinary. Nanning suddenly gazed at Yixian. Yixian grinned. Miss Nanning, well done. All the others were speechless. Nanning gazed at Yixian in silence. Meanwhile, Han Jiang suddenly sent a voice transmission to Yixian. I just found out that they've gone to Daybreak City, and they've obtained the 6 star veins within Daybreak City. Yixian's face instantly darkened when he heard this. Nanning suddenly turned around and left. Meanwhile, a shadow flashed down from the sky and shot towards Nanning. It was Tianqin, the last monstrous genius of Daybreak City. Nanning didn't even turn around. Right when Tianqin was about to arrive in front of Nanning, a shadow suddenly appeared behind Nanning, and then a ray of cold light shot out like a waterfall and instantly obstructed Tianqin's path. Rumble! An explosion resounded, and then Tianqin was blasted over 1 kilometer back. A black-clothed man was standing behind Nanning, and he held a dagger in his right hand. Tianqin stared fixedly at the black-clothed man and was about to attack again. Meanwhile, the Defiant spoke abruptly. Tianqin, they're outnumbered. You can't defeat them. Tianqin fell silent. Nanning turned around to glance at Tianqin with a calm gaze. However, she didn't attack, and she just led the other experts along as she vanished into the distance. However, before completely disappearing, she threw Yixian, who was next to her. Yixian's brows knit together slightly. He rubbed his face lightly and said, Xiao Ta, that woman keeps looking at me. Could she have taken a liking to me? Xiao Ta. At the side, Han Jiang looked at the corpses around him. After a long silence, he suddenly looked at the experts of Evernight City outside the city and smiled. We won. Victory. All of a sudden, all the warriors in the city of Evernight seethed with excitement. Victory. The Evernight City and the Daybreak City had been fighting for countless years. Today, the Evernight City had finally won. Yixian looked around, then turned around and left. Yixian found Heaven's Loathsome and God Eye. Both of them were still alive. He had been keeping an eye on them. Heaven's Hater looked at Yixian. You're leaving? Yixian nodded. Heaven's Loathsome asked again, 6 realms? Yixian smiled and said, Yes. I want to take a look. Heaven's Loathsome was silent. God Eye wanted to say something but hesitated. Yixian continued, I will talk to the Lord of Cold River City. He will focus on training the 2 of you and help you reach the transformation realm as soon as possible. Although Nanning and the others had taken 6 star veins, the Daybreak City had more than that. Conservatively speaking, the Evernight City could get at least 15 star veins. God Eye suddenly smiled and said, Brother Yi, wait for us to come find you. Xian smiled and said, "All right." Heaven's hater glanced at Xian and said nothing. At this time, Xian suddenly looked at Heaven's hater and said, "Don't call me King Reliance. This time, I didn't rely on others." Ha! As he spoke, he turned around and flew on his sword. In the blink of an eye, he vanished into the horizon. Heaven's hater looked at Xian's vanishing figure and said nothing for a long time. At the end of the starry sky, Xian suddenly stopped because the Defying One and Han Jiang had appeared before him. Han Jiang smiled and said, "Why did you leave without saying goodbye?" Xian smiled and said, "Lord of Cold River City, the matter here has come to an end." Han Jiang hesitated for a moment, and then he took out a spatial ring and gave it to Xian. Xian was surprised. "What are you doing?" Han Jiang smiled and said, "I know you won't stay here. There are 2 star veins in here. I hope you can use them." 2 star veins. Xian did not refuse. He took the storage ring right away. "Thank you so much." Han Jiang shook his head slightly. "It's me who should thank you. If it weren't for you, my Evernight City would be finished. If Xian hadn't persuaded the Riverside mercenary group to leave, my Evernight City would have lost." Xian smiled and said, "Don't mention it. Strictly speaking, I'm from Evernight City as well." Hearing this, Han Jiang laughed and then he took out another spatial ring and gave it to Xian. There was another star vein inside. Han Jiang said seriously, "Be careful when you're outside. If you meet someone you can't defeat, don't fight them head-on. Staying alive is more important. When you have time, come back more often." Before, he treated Xian as a guest. Now, he treated Xian as one of his own. In fact, it wasn't that he wanted to treat Xian as an outsider. Mainly, he felt that Xian didn't treat himself as a member of Evernight City. "Xian," the Defying One suddenly asked, "Brother Yi, are you going to the 6 realms?" Xian nodded and said, "I'm going to have a look." "Together?" The Defying One shook his head slightly. "I have to wait." Xian smiled and said, "Then I'll wait for you over there." The Defying One nodded and said, "Okay." Xian suddenly asked, "Where's Tianchen?" "Tianchen." Han Jiang said, "He's gone. We didn't make things difficult for him." Xian looked at Han Jiang. Han Jiang smiled and said, "Even if he wants to take revenge, he'll take revenge on the people by the riverside." Hearing this, Xian understood. In fact, he could see that although Tianchen and the Defying One were opponents, the 2 of them definitely appreciated each other. Otherwise, Tianchen wouldn't have come out to stop the God Yong mercenary group. Han Jiang suddenly said, "Little friendy, take care." Xian smiled and said, "Take care." After saying this, he disappeared at the end of the starry sky. Han Jiang looked at the end of the starry sky and said softly, "I wonder where this little guy came from." As he said this, he looked at the Defying One. The Defying One shook his head and said, "Previously, I thought he was from the Great Matian Domain's sacred bloodline, but now it seems that the Great Matian Domain is just a passerby to him." Han Jiang smiled faintly. "I remember that he joined Daylight City in the beginning. Unfortunately, Daylight City actually chased him out." The Defying One suddenly said in a deep voice, "Daybreak City seems to have another old guy." Han Jiang turned his head to take a look and sneered, "That old fart runs faster than anyone else." The Defying One nodded slightly and said, "I'm going into seclusion for a while." Han Jiang smiled and said, "Yes, you have to work hard." The Defying One looked at the end of the starry sky and then turned to leave. On the other side, on a mountain peak, there were 3 people standing there. An old man, a young man, and a woman. The man was Mu Chen, who had befriended Xian that day, and the woman was his sister. The old man was Mu Chen's grandfather, Mu Ming, who was also the previous city lord of Daybreak City. Mu Ming looked into the distance and said softly, "I never thought that my Daybreak City would be finished like this." Mu Chen and his sister fell silent. Mu Ming suddenly shook his head and said, "If I had listened to your suggestion and personally intervened, things might not have turned out like this. I've underestimated Xian." That day, Mu Chen came to him, hoping that he could intervene and mediate the conflict between Xian and the Day-Night City. Unfortunately, he did not take it seriously at that time. He allowed the strong warriors of the Day-Night City to hunt down Yixian, which led to Yixian completely turning to the Evernight City. If he had listened to Mu Chen's suggestion and intervened, things might have turned out differently. Of course, there were no ifs in this world. At this time, Mu Ming said, "The two of you should leave." Mu Chen looked at Mu Ming and Mu Ming said softly, "Don't think about revenge. Daybreak City will not be able to take revenge." Mu Chen hesitated for a moment, then bowed slightly and left with his sister. In this place, there was no place for them to stay. Yixian and Jiang Ban would not target them, but Eternal Night City would not let them go. Weeds must be cut by the roots. On the side, Mu Ming looked into the distant sky and said nothing. On the other side, Mu Chen walked down the mountain with his sister. The woman said in a low voice, "Brother, where are we going now?" Mu Chen said, "To the 6 worlds." The woman hesitated for a moment and said, "Yixian will definitely go to the 6 worlds as well." Mu Chen smiled. "He won't look for trouble with us." The woman was puzzled. "Why?" Mu Chen said softly, "Because we're no different than ants in his eyes. Would you purposely step on an ant to death?" The woman was speechless. At the end of the starry sky, Yixian was flying on his sword. His target this time was the 6 worlds. His target was actually very clear, and that was to ceaselessly search for stronger experts and follow in the footsteps of his father and the others. Right at this moment, Xiaota suddenly said, "Young master, I suggest that you cultivate for a while first." Yixian was puzzled. "Why?" Xiaota said, "I'm afraid that once you go to the 6 worlds, you'll become a little brother again. Don't tell me you've forgotten those bloody lessons in the past?" Yixian's expression froze. Needless to say, what Xiaota said did make some sense. The 6 worlds. Yixian thought for a moment, and then he was about to enter Xiaota's body to cultivate. Suddenly, the space in front of him trembled slightly, and then it split open. After that, a man who was dressed like a beggar walked out from within it. Needless to say, this man was really wretched, and he was disgusting at first glance. Yixian didn't like to judge a book by its cover, but some people were just like that. They were disgusting at first glance. The man gazed at Yixian and grinned, "I've been paying attention to you for a long time." Yixian's brows knit together slightly. "Who are you?" The man roared with laughter, "Who I am isn't important. What's important is that I want to meet someone." Yixian was slightly puzzled. "Meet someone?" The man pointed at the sword in Yixian's hand, and then he said, "I want to meet the person who made this sword." "Meet Qing? Yixian was stunned when he heard this. The man closed his eyes slowly. "I've cultivated in the divine battlefield for 102,000 years, and I've absorbed countless battle intent during this period." When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Yixian with a slightly crazed expression. "I'm already invincible in this world. Do you know the loneliness of being invincible?" Yixian was speechless. Chapter 2064. Invincible. Yixian's expression became strange. What the hell is this? He had been to the divine battlefield, but he did not see this person. In the distance, the man suddenly laughed. He smiled as he looked at the green profound sword in Yixian's hand. "When this sword appeared in the divine battlefield, countless battle intents in my body instantly boiled. They thirsted for battle." Yixian glanced at the man. "You are." The man laughed. "God of War. Isn't the name I gave myself very domineering?" "Ha." Yixian, Xiaota suddenly said. "I finally met someone even weirder than Tianyi." Yixian's face darkened. "Let him go." "Xiaota." Yixian looked at the man and hesitated. "From what I know, the 6 realms also have many experts. Why don't you go there directly?" "6 realms?" The man's eyes were filled with disdain. "After I get rid of this sword maker, I will sweep across the 6 realms and show those ants what true power is." Yixian felt a headache. "Why don't you sweep across the 6 realms first?" The man looked at Yixian. "What? That sword maker doesn't dare to come out?" Yixian thought for a while. Then he said, "Shall we fight?" The man glanced at Yi Xian with disdain. You think you're worthy? Yi Xian, the man's expression gradually turned cold. I don't want to waste time with you. Hurry up and ask the sword maker to come out. Yi Xian did not waste any time. He suddenly disappeared on the spot. The next moment, a sword light slashed down from the man's head. Qing? He naturally would not do such a thing. Not everyone could see Qing. Seeing Yi Xian attack, the man frowned. How dare you attack me? As soon as he finished speaking, he clenched his right hand into a fist, and then he punched forward. An extremely terrifying force swept out with this punch, and it also carried a monstrous battle intent. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword descended. Yi Xian was using the Azure Profound Sword. Facing this fellow of unknown origin, he did not dare to be careless and underestimate him. As Yi Xian slashed down with his sword, boom, an expanse of light suddenly erupted. In the next moment, the man was blasted over 10 kilometers away, and when he stopped, his right hand had split open and countless strands of blood sprayed out. The man was stunned. Yi Xian was also stunned. This guy's hand was crippled just like that? The man looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. You, Yi Xian said solemnly, are you too weak or am I too strong? The man, Yi Xian's expression became strange. It had to be said that he was really confused. He'd thought that this fellow was an expert, but now it seemed like this fellow wasn't an expert. In the distance, the man gazed at Yi Xian in disbelief. How could this be possible? This is absolutely impossible. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly leaped up and charged towards Yi Xian. When he arrived in front of Yi Xian, he suddenly clenched his left hand into a fist, and then he punched towards Yi Xian's face. As soon as he punched out, countless strands of battle intent surged out from his fist, and the space in the surroundings instantly seethed. Yi Xian didn't even think about it, and he used his thumb to block lightly. The Azure Profound Sword slashed forward. Bang! The man didn't even have time to react before he was blasted flying, and he flew for almost 30 kilometers. When he finally stopped, his left hand had been directly torn apart. Now both of his hands were gone. In the distance, Yi Xian was slightly speechless. Damn it! I'd thought that this fellow was an expert, but it turns out that he's just a pretentious fellow. And he still wants to look for Qing? In the distance, the man was slightly dazed. How could this be? This, Yi Xian glanced at the man who was about to go mad. Did you cultivate wrongly? The man raised his head and looked at Yi Xian, and roared furiously, Shut up, you ant! As he spoke, he actually charged towards Yi Xian once again. Yi Xian was slightly speechless. He used his thumb to block lightly once more, and the Azure Profound Sword flew out again. This time, it was even faster than before. In the distance, the man's pupils suddenly shrank. He was just about to attack when he shockingly realized that he couldn't do it anymore. Pissed, the Azure Profound Sword pierced directly into the man's chest. Bang! In an instant, the man was directly nailed to the space. It's over. The man stared blankly into the distance. How? Is this possible? Yi Xian glanced at the man and frowned slightly. He also felt that something wasn't right. He had sensed the man's battle intent just now, and it was extremely terrifying, causing his heart to palpitate slightly. However, this guy's strength was abnormally weak. Was there a problem somewhere? At this moment, the man's chest suddenly split open, and the next moment, a blood-red beating heart floated out slowly. That heart was filled with endless battle intent. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Heart of battle intent? The man looked at the heart in front of him, and his eyes were still blank. I've already condensed the heart of battle intent. Why is it like this? Why, at this moment, Xiaoda suddenly said, Do you only absorb battle intent? The man looked at Yi Xian. Is there a problem? Xiaoda fell silent for a moment and said, You only absorb battle intent and don't cultivate your strength, right? The man was even more confused. Is there a problem? Xiaoda sighed softly. You're really a talent. The man, Yi Xian, was a little confused. Xiaoda, do you know what's going on? Xiaoda said, It's very simple. This guy has been absorbing battle intent for hundreds of thousands of years, but he doesn't cultivate. He only absorbs battle intent. This is like a guy who only cultivates moves and doesn't cultivate inner strength. Although he won't be weak, if he meets a real powerhouse, he won't be able to withstand a single blow. Yi Xian frowned slightly. This analogy is not suitable. Change it. Xiao Ta was speechless. He thought for a moment and then continued to say, simply put, this guy only absorbs battle intent but doesn't cultivate strength. His battle intent is very strong, but what's the use of just having a strong battle intent? If battle intent doesn't have a strong power to support it, it's very useless. It's just like how you only eat without eating vegetables. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What the hell is this analogy? Xiao Ta was a little angry. I'm just a Ta. Yi Xian, in the distance, the man suddenly said with a trembling voice, Did I cultivate wrong? Yi Xian looked at the man. You didn't cultivate wrong. You didn't cultivate at all. The man, Yi Xian, was also a little speechless. There's actually such a person who absorbs battle intent every day and doesn't cultivate at all? He absorbed enough battle intent. But what's the use? He's putting the cart before the horse. The man suddenly looked at Yi Xian. What about me? Yi Xian thought for a moment and then said, That's easy. This heart of battle intent of yours isn't very useful to you, but you can give it to me. I'll help you develop it. Hearing this, the man said angrily, You want to steal my heart of battle intent? Don't you dare. Yi Xian's green profound sword suddenly disappeared between the man's brows. The man froze on the spot and couldn't move. In the next moment, his soul started to be absorbed by the green profound sword. The man glared at Yi Xian angrily. How can you do this? Yi Xian said seriously, You're the one who came to me. The man, when he saw that the man intended to say something, Yi Xian waved his right hand, and the green profound sword completely absorbed the man's soul. After he absorbed the man's soul, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword returned to his grasp. After that, he gazed at the heart of battle intent and said softly, How do I use this thing? Xiao Ta said, Just absorb it directly. Absorb it directly. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then a strand of sword intent enveloped the heart of battle intent. In the next moment, the heart of battle intent entered his chest. Bang! In an instant, boundless battle intent erupted from Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian's eyes opened wide, and his entire body started to tremble violently. In next to no time, the boundless battle intent was absorbed by Yi Xian. He'd comprehended battle intent in the past, but the battle intent he'd comprehended was truly too weak when compared to this battle intent. There was no comparison at all. Moreover, even though he'd comprehended battle intent in the past, he'd started to focus on sword intent later on. So, his battle intent wasn't strong at all. Yi Xian entered Xiao Ta's body directly, sat down cross-legged, and then activated the energy of his bloodline. Because he noticed that the battle intent was truly too terrifying, and his body was slightly unable to endure it. So, he had to suppress it with the energy of his bloodline and absorb it slowly. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. After an unknown period of time, the battle intent around Yi Xian gradually calmed down. At this moment, he'd absorbed more than half of it. 3 days later, sitting on the ground with his legs crossed, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. The space-time in front of him was boiling. Battle intent. At this moment, he had completely absorbed the battle will heart. After absorbing the battle will heart, his own heart became the battle will heart. Needless to say, Yi Xian was extremely excited at this moment. Because the battle intent was truly formidable. After he absorbed it, his overall strength had improved by at least a level, and this battle intent would be one of his trump cards when he fought others in the future. The battle intent that he'd absorbed for hundreds of thousands of years. At the thought of this, Yi Xian couldn't help but burst out laughing. This was simply too exhilarating. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the azure profound sword appeared in his hand. In the next moment, an extremely terrifying battle intent enveloped his entire body, and the azure profound sword in his hand began to tremble slightly under the support of the battle intent. Fight. At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes gradually turned scarlet. It wasn't because of his bloodline, but because once the battle intent was activated, it would make one want to fight uncontrollably. At this moment, even he himself felt that he could fight Qing. When he realized this, Yi Xian was shocked, and he quickly retracted the battle intent. Damn it! This battle intent can make people feel smug. Now, he finally understood why that man was so smug. There was a big reason for this battle intent. Chapter 2065. After withdrawing his battle intent, Yi Xian felt his mind become clearer. That battle intent could really affect a person's mind. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly said, "Young master, do you want to go to the Milky Way to play?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Why do you want to go to the Milky Way?" Xiaota hurriedly said, "Go to play. It's fun there. Moreover, Sister Tianming is there too, don't you want to see her?" Yi Xian smiled. "Xiaota, you are the one who wants to see Qing." Xiaota was silent. Yi Xian was a little curious. "You want to see Qing, or so that she can help you modify it?" Xiaota softly sighed. "Yes. I am completely your cultivation room now. I don't have any sense of existence. To be honest, I am not very happy. I don't want to become like the prison pagoda, slowly forgotten." Prison pagoda. Yi Xian was stunned, then said, "I don't know if you don't tell me, I still have the prison pagoda." Prison pagoda. Xiaota softly sighed. When needed, the pagoda is a treasure. When not needed, the pagoda is just a blade of grass. Tragic. Yi Xian suddenly said, "I remember that there are still 3 levels of the prison pagoda not opened." 3 levels? Xiaota asked, "Young master, do you want to open it? With your current strength, opening it should be a piece of cake." Yi Xian thought for a moment, then smiled, "Not opening it." Xiaota did not understand. Why? Yi Xian laughed. "Leave it for my son to open." Xiaota was silent for a moment, then said, "Awesome." Yi Xian did not choose to go to the Milky Way in the end. Why go to the Milky Way now? He did not have time to play. After leaving Xiaota, Yi Xian headed straight to the 6 realms. Regarding the 6 realms, he had obtained some information from Han Jiang. However, it was not much because Han Jiang had never been to the 6 realms. As the name suggested, the 6 realms was a universe formed by 6 worlds. Each world had a superpower. As for the status of those mercenary groups in the 6 realms, he didn't know. Therefore, he didn't know the overall strength of the 6 realms. Meanwhile, the tiny pagoda said abruptly, "Young master, you seem to still not have summoned the energy of the universe until now." Yi Xian smiled and said, "With my current strength, do I need to borrow power?" Xiaota hesitated for a while, then said, "Little Lord's words have become unyielding now. I hope you will always be strong." Yi Xian was speechless. Yi Xian didn't waste any more time talking to the small tower. He increased his speed and used the Qingxian sword to travel through space and time. But even so, he still spent almost half a month to arrive at the 6 realms. The 6 realms were the Ancient Realm, God Realm, Netherworld, Heavenly Realm, Meru Realm, and Spirit Realm. As soon as Yi Xian arrived in the 6 realms, a woman appeared before him. Yi Xian was slightly stunned and surprised when he saw this woman. This woman was none other than Nan Ning. Nan Ning looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian smiled lightly. "Miss Nan Ning, are you here to pick me up?" Nan Ning frowned slightly. "What makes you think I'm here to pick you up?" Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly. "So you're not here to pick me up?" Nan Ning glanced at Yi Xian. "What are you doing in the 6 realms?" Yi Xian smiled. "To experience the 6 realms." Nan Ning fell silent. Yi Xian blinked. "Am I not welcome?" Nan Ning's face was expressionless. "The 6 realms aren't mine, so what right do I have to not welcome you?" Yi Xian smiled. "Miss Nan Ning, can you introduce the 6 realms to me?" Nan Ning's expression was calm. "What do you want to know?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "What's the name of the number 1 mercenary group?" Nan Ning frowned slightly. Why are you asking that? Could it be that you want to join that mercenary group? Yixin smiled. No, I'm just curious. Nanning didn't speak. Yixin smiled. Miss Nanning, I think you're waiting for me here for something, right? Nanning glanced at the surroundings and said, let's go somewhere else. As she spoke, she turned around and left. Yixin smiled and then he followed her. Nanning led Yixin into a teleportation channel, and it didn't take long for the two of them to travel swiftly through the spatial tunnel. Yixin asked, where are we going? Nanning said, the ancient plane. Yixin nodded slightly and was about to ask something, but the two of them had already left the spatial tunnel, and then an enormous ancient city appeared before them. The ancient city was situated between two mountains, and there was an ocean in front of it. It was impossible to see the end of the ocean. Nanning suddenly said, the ancient city is the largest city in the ancient plane, and it's the territory of the ancients. The ancients have occupied the ancient city for almost 10 million years, and their resources are unimaginably deep. Yixin hesitated for a moment, and then he asked, Miss Nanning, what level of existence does your mercenary group belong to in the 6 realms? Nanning glanced at Yixin. Take a guess. Yixin's face instantly darkened. Nanning didn't answer Yixin's question, and she just led Yixin to the city gate. She opened her palm, and a small bag flew to the guard at the gate. The guard skillfully put away the bag and let them pass. After entering the city, Nanning suddenly said, you can cause trouble here, but don't provoke the ancients. If you provoke them, Yixin suddenly asked, if they provoke me, what should I do? Nanning glanced at Yixin. If you have a backer, and that backer is stronger than the ancients, then you can kill him. Yixin thought for a moment, and then he nodded, I understand. Nanning said, it's good that you understand. You better keep a low profile here. After saying that, she quickly walked into the distance. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly said, Young lord, I feel that your understanding and her understanding are not the same. Do you want to communicate with her again? Yixin was speechless. Soon, Nanning brought Yixin to a small building. The building wasn't tall, and it only had 3 floors. After entering the small building, a delicate and pretty lady welcomed them, and she bowed slightly to Nanning. Captain. Nanning nodded slightly, and then she led Yixin upstairs. Soon, Nanning brought Yixin to a small pavilion. From the window of the pavilion, they could see the streets below, and the scenery was pretty good. Nanning sat down, and she looked at Yixin. Can you tell me why you're here? Yixin sat opposite Nanning, and then he said, I want to see a stronger expert. Nanning looked at Yixin, and she didn't say anything. Yixin smiled. Miss Nanning, don't look at me like that, I'll feel a little embarrassed. Xiaota was speechless. After a moment of silence, Nanning said, Young Master Yi, I can't see through you. Yixin smiled slightly. Miss Nanning, why do I feel that you're very wary of me? Nanning looked at Yixin. You're not an ordinary person, but you give me the feeling that you're bragging. I really can't understand you. Are you really awesome, or are you just bragging? Yixin was speechless. At this time, the delicate and pretty lady from before came in with 2 cups of spirit tea. She put the spirit tea on the table, and then she quietly retreated. Yixin glanced at the delicate and pretty lady, and he found that the strength of this delicate and pretty lady was actually Prakrit transformation. Prakrit transformation. Damn. Prakrit transformation was already everywhere in this place? Yixin felt a headache coming on. At this time, Nanning said again, Young Master Yi, who are you? Where did you come from? Yixin smiled and then said, Miss Nanning, why are you so curious about me? Nanning pointed at the sword in Yixin's hand. This sword of yours is very unusual. Yixin blinked. Miss Nanning, I just want to understand the 6 realms. If you're not willing to tell me, it's all right, I'll ask someone else. After saying that, he got up and left. Nanning frowned slightly. Young Master Yi. Yixin ignored her and directly walked out. At this time, the delicate and pretty lady suddenly blocked in front of Yixin, and she looked straight at Yixin. Leader is calling you. Yixin looked at the delicate and pretty lady. Get out of my way. The delicate and pretty lady looked straight at Yi Xian, without the slightest intention of giving way. Not only that, her eyes were filled with undisguised condescension, just like a human looking at an ant. Yi Xian suddenly used his thumb to lightly push. The green profound sword was suddenly unsheathed. The pretty lady's eyes instantly narrowed at the instant that the sword was drawn. She hadn't expected that Yi Xian would actually attack in a place like this. However, her reaction was extremely swift, and she slapped her palm forward lightly. It was very light, and it seemed like it was made of cotton. Bang! An expanse of sword light suddenly erupted. In an instant, the entire pavilion was directly shattered and obliterated, whereas that delicate and pretty woman was directly slashed into a mysterious space-time abyss by Yi Xian's sword strike. Not only that, but the right hand that she used to collide head-on with Yi Xian had even shattered. A single sword strike had shattered her hand. The pretty lady was slightly dazed. She hadn't expected that her right hand would actually be gone just like that. Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Nan Ning suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and she stared fixedly at Yi Xian. What's the meaning of this? Yi Xian's expression was calm. Miss Nan Ning, I've come with you because I want to find out about the 6 realms from you, not to be interrogated by you. Of course, I won't force you if you're unwilling to tell me. But why is your subordinate stopping me? What does she want to do? Nan Ning stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Then you attacked? Yi Xian nodded. Is there a problem? Nan Ning's eyes narrowed as she looked at Yi Xian, and a ghastly cold light flickered in her eyes. Yi Xian walked over to Nan Ning and grinned. Miss Nan Ning, to be honest, I don't know why things have developed to this state. Really, I merely wanted to find out about the 6 realms from you. Of course, it would be good if we could be friends, but it seems like that won't be possible now. As he spoke, he glanced at the pretty lady in the distance. I really don't like the look in your eyes. Besides that, you don't have the right to look down on me like that. If you look at me like that again, believe me, it'll be the last time you look at me in this lifetime. With that, he turned around and left. P.S. I've exploded before. Please vote. Chapter 2066. As soon as Yi Xian left, the woman clenched her right fist tightly. Obviously, she still intended to attack. Even though Yi Xian was formidable, Yi Xian's cultivation was very low, so others would subconsciously look down on him. Right at this moment, Nan Ning suddenly looked at the pretty woman and shook his head. The woman hesitated for a moment before she let go. Nan Ning looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi. However, Yi Xian paid no attention to her and vanished into the distance. Nan Ning frowned slightly. The woman walked over to Nan Ning's side and spoke in a low voice. Leader, who is he? Nan Ning fell silent for a moment before she said, a fellow of mysterious origins. The woman's expression was calm, but a cold glow flashed through her eyes. What gives him the right to be so arrogant? Nan Ning shook her head slightly and remained silent. She looked out the window with a trace of worry in her eyes because Yi Xian's origins were truly too mysterious. She'd investigated Yi Xian through various methods, but she hadn't found any clues. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man in black armor appeared here, and he looked at Nan Ning and spoke in a low voice. Young miss, is someone causing trouble? Nan Ning shook her head slightly. It's nothing. You may leave. The man hesitated for a moment before he turned around and vanished. Nan Ning gazed at the woman. Pay attention to him in secret and don't offend him. The woman nodded slightly. Yes. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and vanished. Nan Ning gazed into the distance while a trace of bewilderment flashed through her eyes. That sword. After Yi Xian left, he walked directly towards the depths of the city. The ancient city. Yi Xian sized up the surroundings. The buildings in the surroundings were suffused with an ancient aura, and there were some extremely obscure and formidable auras in the city as well. There were quite a number of experts in the city. However, Yi Xian was quite curious. Would there be experts above the embodiment transformation realm in the city? With that question in mind, Yi Xian walked towards the depths of the city. Not long after he walked, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He turned around and saw a man looking at him from afar. Seeing this man, Yi Xian was stunned. He recognized this man. He was He Yan, a member of the Divine Young mercenary group. However, at this moment, He Yan's physical body had already recovered. Upon seeing Yi Xian, He Yan was slightly taken aback. Evidently, he did not expect to meet Yi Xian here. Yi Xian smiled. "Brother He Yan, what a coincidence." He Yan's expression was a little strange. Yi Xian walked to He Yan and smiled. "Brother He Yan, what are you doing here?" He Yan hesitated for a while, then said, "Accept the job." Yi Xian furrowed his brows. "Work?" He Yan nodded. Yi Xian looked behind He Yan. Behind him, there was a task board with many notices. Yi Xian was a little curious. He walked to the front of the mission board and glanced at it. Then he realized that the rewards for these missions weren't low. One of them was to escort a person, and the reward was actually 22 star veins. 22 veins. Yi Xian pointed at the mission board excitedly. "Brother He Yan, could this be a scam?" He Yan glanced at Yi Xian. "No, because in order to post the notice, you have to pay a 30% deposit to the Mercenary Association. Moreover, after you complete the mission, if the other party breaks the contract, you will be attacked by all the mercenaries. Even the 6 major forces wouldn't do such a stupid thing." Yi Xian looked at He Yan. "Mercenary Association?" He Yan pondered for a moment, then said, "An organization formed by various large mercenaries." Yi Xian nodded. He looked at the mission board. At this moment, He Yan shook his head. "You can't accept this job." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Why?" He Yan sighed in a low voice. Do you know who posted this mission?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't know." He Yan said, "It's the spiritual realm princess, but she's the previous one. Not long ago, there was a change in the spiritual realm. The old spiritual king fell for unknown reasons. Originally, the spiritual realm princess was supposed to inherit the throne. However, the second in command of the spiritual realm, Elder Ling Tian, suddenly announced that he would inherit the throne and control the spiritual realm. Thus, the spiritual realm princess escaped to this ancient realm, and she posted this mission in the hope that someone would escort her to the faraway spiritual palace temple." Yi Xian frowned. "The spiritual palace temple?" He Yan nodded. "That is a very sacred place to the spiritual realm. If she goes there, even if Ling Tian had 100 guts, she wouldn't dare to attack the living beings of the spiritual realm. However, she definitely won't let the spiritual realm princess go there. After all, as long as the spiritual realm princess is alive, it's a threat to her rule. After all, she's the rightful successor." Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he said, "The reason the spiritual realm doesn't come to the ancient realm to capture her is because they have a conflict with the ancient realm?" He Yan nodded slightly. "The ancient realm and the spiritual realm have always been on bad terms. Because the ancient clan once captured many living beings of the spiritual realm, the two clans even fought in the past and almost went to an all-out war. Although it calmed down in the end, these two forces have always been at odds." Yi Xian roughly understood when he heard this. The ancient clan obviously wanted the spiritual realm princess to stay here to annoy the spiritual realm. However, the ancient clan would absolutely not fight the spiritual realm to the death just for the spiritual realm princess. Meanwhile, He Yan suddenly asked, "Why are you here?" Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and smiled. "I'm here for a stroll." He Yan glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Meanwhile, the mission posted by the spiritual realm princess on the mission panel suddenly vanished. Both of them were slightly stunned. Meanwhile, a new mission appeared on the panel, and it was posted by the spiritual realm princess. However, both of them were stunned when they saw the contents of the mission. The mission hadn't changed, but the reward had. The reward had changed from 22 star veins to 52 star veins. 52 star veins. Both of them thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them when they saw the number. 52 star veins. Yi Xian gazed at He Yan, and the latter hesitated for a moment before he said, "Brother Yi, farewell." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished. More and more divine senses appeared here. Obviously, the reward announced by the Radiant Realms princess had tempted countless experts. Yi Xian glanced at the mission invitation, and he was a little shocked. 52 star veins. That was absolutely a huge sum. Perhaps some would be tempted and take the risk. There would definitely be brave men under such a great reward. Right at this moment, He Yen, who'd left earlier, appeared once more. Yi Xian gazed at He Yen and was about to speak when He Yen spoke first. Brother Yi, our leader invites you to meet him. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Bai Yi? He Yen nodded. Yes. Yi Xian smiled. What does he want me to do? He Yen smiled embarrassedly. I don't know. Young Master Yi will know once you get there. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, Then you lead the way. He Yen was overjoyed when he saw Yi Xian agree, and he hurriedly said, Brother Yi, please. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Under He Yen's lead, Yi Xian arrived at a black hall. After entering the hall, Yi Xian was stunned. At this moment, there were 4 people in the hall, and he knew 2 of them. They were Bai Yi and Nan Ning. Besides them, there was a fat man who wore a loose and luxurious robe. His belly was so big that it seemed like he'd been pregnant for 10 months. Beside the fat man was a man in black clothes. The man held a slender jade flute in his left hand, and there was a faint smile on his face. After bringing Yi Xian to the hall, He Yen left. Bai Yi suddenly stood up and walked in front of Yi Xian, and he smiled, Welcome. Although they were enemies in the past, it was because of their interests. But now, there was no conflict of interest between them. Yi Xian smiled. Leader Bai Yi, did you ask me to come here because of the spiritual princess? Bai Yi nodded. Yes. As he spoke, he sat at the side, and then looked at Yi Xian. Please sit. Yi Xian sat on one of the seats, and he glanced at the fat man and the man in black clothes. At this moment, the 2 of them were also looking at him. At this moment, Bai Yi suddenly explained, Brother Yi, these 2 are the leader of the Tuanzi mercenary group, Fatty Dragon, and the leader of the Divine Pavilion mercenary group, Xianxia. Tuanzi mercenary group. Fatty Dragon. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression instantly became a little strange. This fat guy actually came up with such an interesting name. At this moment, Fatty Dragon looked at Yi Xian, and he smiled. Brother Yi, if you think it's funny, you can laugh out loud, ha. Yi Xian smiled. Your name is indeed interesting. Fatty Dragon glanced at Yi Xian, and he smiled. I wonder who Brother Yi is? As he spoke, he looked at Bai Yi. Bai Yi glanced at Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Yi Xian. There was only one word. Hearing this, Fatty Dragon frowned slightly. At this moment, Bai Yi suddenly said, Everyone, what do you think about the spiritual princess mission? Xianxia smiled. It's very tempting, but it's very risky. Moreover, as long as we leave the city, that person from the spiritual realm will definitely besiege us at all costs. With just us mercenary groups, we won't be able to withstand the crazy counterattack of the spiritual realm. Fatty Dragon nodded slightly. The reason why the spiritual princess suddenly increased the remuneration, there must be some movement from the spiritual realm. As he spoke, he looked at Nan Ning. Nan Ning was silent for a moment, and he said, As far as I know, the spiritual realm is already negotiating with the ancient race, but I don't know the details. At this moment, Xianxia suddenly smiled. Unless they are also willing to join, we won't be able to complete this mission with just the few of us. Everyone was silent. But naturally, they were referring to the number 1 mercenary group. Bai Yi suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Brother Yi, what do you think? Hearing this, everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, in the next moment, he seemed to have felt something, and he directly turned and disappeared from the hall. In the hall, everyone was a little confused. What was going on? Inside the hall, Bai Yi and the others looked at each other, their faces full of doubt. Outside the hall, Yi Xian was running on his sword, and within his body, Xiaota said anxiously, Young lord, quick, go to the left, quick, faster, Yi Xian. Chapter 2067. Yi Xian was running on his sword. He was doing this because of Xiaota. Of course, he didn't know what Xiaota had sensed. Xiaota was only telling him to run in that direction. Although he was puzzled, he chose to believe Xiaota. After all, although Xiaota wasn't reliable, he wouldn't make such a joke. At this moment, an invisible barrier suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian frowned and was about to attack. Xiaota quickly said, "Don't." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Lil Tower, what did you discover?" Xiaota said, "Someone is asking Little White for help." Yi Xian frowned. "Asking Little White for help?" Xiaota said, "Yes. It's not far away from you." Yi Xian looked into the distance. There was an illusory white palace below him. Yi Xian was about to step forward when the space in front of him trembled slightly. Then a woman in black armor showed up in front of him. It wasn't a human. It was a spirit. As for what kind of spirit it was, Yi Xian didn't know. The woman looked at Yi Xian with hostility in her eyes. At this moment, the tendo mark on Yi Xian's forehead lit up. The woman was stunned when she saw the tendo mark, and then she asked, "You are?" The hostility in her eyes had vanished. Yi Xian said in his heart, "Xiaota, what should I say?" Xiaota said after a moment of silence, "Ask her who's asking Little White for help." Yi Xian looked at the woman. "Who's asking Little White for help?" The woman frowned. "Little White." Xiaota's voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "It's the Spirit Patriarch." Yi Xian said, "It's the Spirit Patriarch." Spirit Patriarch. Hearing this, the woman's eyes instantly narrowed. At this moment, vigilance appeared in her eyes. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from below. "Since he has the mark of the tendo, he is not a bad person. Let him in." The armored woman hesitated for a moment before looking at Yi Xian. "Please." Under the guidance of the armored woman, Yi Xian arrived at a large white hall. Inside the hall stood a woman. She wore a long snow-white dress, and her long hair draped over her back. Her body emitted a faintly discernible wave of spirit qi. Princess of the spirit world. When Yi Xian saw the woman in front of him, he guessed her identity. The spirit realm princess looked at Yi Xian. "You are?" Yi Xian asked in a grave voice, "Are you seeking guidance from the spirit patriarch?" The princess was slightly stunned, and then she said, "How do you know?" Yi Xian asked in his heart, "Xiaota, how did you know?" Xiaota spoke indifferently, "I'm best friends with Whitey." "Thank you." Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the spirit realm princess who stood before Yi Xian said, "Who are you?" Yi Xian restrained his thoughts and gazed at the spirit realm princess. He was slightly speechless. If he said that the spirit patriarch belongs to me, then I wonder if he would be beaten up. He knew that Whitey had an extremely high status in the hearts of these spirits. Suddenly, Xiaota appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he floated over to the spirit realm princess. "Have you contacted Whitey?" "Whitey?" The spirit realm princess hesitated for a moment before she said, "There's no response." Xiaota said, "How did you contact her?" The spirit realm princess withdrew a white box. Xiaota fell silent for a moment before he said, "You've met Whitey?" The spirit realm princess spoke in a low voice. "She left this for my father all those years ago, and then my father gave it to me." Xiaota sighed in a low voice. "Since you were able to make Whitey keep this box, then it proves that you should have a good relationship with her. Since that's the case, why don't you just ask Master for a strand of sword energy? Isn't that safer than this box? Don't you know that since Whitey and Aria went to the Milky Way galaxy, she's become fancier? She's unreliable now as well." Yi Xian was speechless. The spirit realm princess frowned slightly. "Sword energy?" Xiaota fell silent for a moment before he said, "She didn't respond?" The spirit realm princess nodded. "Yes." Xiaota said in a low voice, "She might not have time to care about you now." The spirit realm princess was slightly puzzled. "Why?" Xiaota said, "Because Sister Tunming has gone there. I'm afraid her life with Aria isn't very good." The spirit realm princess was even more puzzled. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly floated over to the box, and then he lightly knocked on the white box. The box trembled slightly, and then a strand of dazzling light erupted from it. In the next moment, The space in front of it trembled slightly, and it wasn't long before an illusory little white fellow appeared in front of everyone. Whitey. The spirit realm princess's expression instantly changed when she saw Whitey, and she hurriedly bowed deeply. Whitey glanced at Xiaota and Yi Xian, and then she pouted and seemed slightly aggrieved. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and asked, "What's wrong?" Whitey waved its little claws swiftly. Yi Xian felt a headache coming on. How could he understand it? He immediately looked at Xiaota. Xiaota fell silent for a moment before he said, "She said that Arya was beaten up by Sister Tianming." Yi Xian's expression froze. Meanwhile, the spirit realm princess suddenly looked at Whitey, and then she bowed deeply again and said, "Spirit ancestor, please save her." Whitey looked at the spirit realm princess. She hesitated for a moment and then pointed at Yi Xian. The spirit realm princess was puzzled and was about to ask something. At this moment, a loud noise suddenly came from the screen, and then the screen disappeared. The spirit realm princess's expression froze. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then looked at Xiaota. "Qing, won't act recklessly, right?" Xiaota said in a low voice, "I don't know." Yi Xian was speechless. Xiaota said again, "I don't think so. Sister Tianming won't deliberately go to the Milky Way to beat Arya. She must have some other purpose for going there." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "That's good." He still had a good impression of Whitey and Arya. At this moment, Xiaota said, "When Whitey disappeared just now, she asked you to help her." Yi Xian looked at the spirit realm princess. Xiaota said, "Yes." Yi Xian had a headache. "How can I help her?" Xiaota said, "Do as you see fit." Yi Xian was speechless. He found that he couldn't help her. Whitey's matter was equivalent to the Yang family's matter. There was nothing wrong with that. Yi Xian looked at the spirit realm princess and hesitated. "Princess, Whitey is in some situation now. She can't come here for the time being. Why don't I send you to the spirit palace?" The spirit realm princess looked at Yi Xian. "You know the spirit ancestor?" Yi Xian nodded. "Of course. After all, we are a family." The spirit realm princess was speechless. Yi Xian said again, "Did something happen when you asked Whitey for help just now?" The spirit realm princess nodded. "I just got the news that this Ling Tian may be trying to persuade the ancient world. Once she really convinces the ancient realm..." At this point, she didn't say anything else. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "You sent out a mission before and asked someone to send you to the spirit palace. Will you be safe if you go there?" The spirit realm princess nodded. "That is a place left by the spirit ancestor. As long as I enter that place, the Ling Tian won't dare to do anything to me." Yi Xian was puzzled. The spirit realm princess said, "Because when the spirit ancestor created that place, she set a ban there. She forbade any spirit from killing each other. If there is a violation, all the spirits in the world can kill them together." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Does her order not work in other places?" The spirit realm princess nodded. "Strictly speaking, it doesn't work. Because when she spoke, she only said it was in the spirit palace." Yi Xian suddenly asked, "If she says that the spirits in the world can't kill each other, will you abide by it in this place?" The spirit realm princess was silent for a long time before she said, "If she is here, everyone will abide by it. If she is not here," Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "But she is not here now. So, if you go to the spirit palace, the Ling Tian might also attack you, right?" The spirit realm princess shook her head. "No. As long as you go there, the Ling Tian definitely won't dare to do anything because that is the residence of the spirit ancestor. No matter how bold she is, she won't dare to do anything in the residence of the spirit ancestor. Even if she does, she won't be afraid. Because once she does, it means that she doesn't respect the spirit ancestor. At that time, even the experts of the spirit realm won't respect her anymore." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "If the spirit ancestor is here and she says she wants you to be the king of the spirit realm, you can be the king of the spirit realm, right?" The spirit realm princess glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. Yi Xian's expression froze. At that moment, Xiaota suddenly said, "Young master, you still don't quite understand Xiaobai's position in the hearts of the spirit realm. How should I put it? Xiaobai's position in the hearts of the spirit realm is like... Yi Xian frowned slightly. What? Xiaota fell silent for a moment and said, "Like rice in the eyes of a mouse." Yi Xian's expression immediately darkened. "Big brother, I beg you. Can you change the analogy?" Xiaota said angrily, "Young master, how long will it take for you to understand that I'm just a tower?" "The tower? I'm just a tower." Yi Xian was speechless. Xiaota continued, "In any case, Xiaobai is very sacred in the hearts of the spirit realm. No spirit dares to disobey her. Moreover, if she is willing to help a spirit, she can greatly increase the upper limit of that spirit's growth. Of course, the most important thing is that she can also easily destroy a spirit. Before her, the spirit ancestor is completely powerless. She can absolutely suppress her." Yi Xian said softly, "She's that fierce?" Xiaota said, "Not just ordinarily fierce. So, what the princess said is right. As long as you go to the spirit palace, that Ling Tian won't dare to do anything to her. No matter how powerful she is, she definitely won't dare to disrespect Xiaobai." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, "We are Xiaobai's friends. That Ling Tian won't dare to do anything to us, right?" Xiaota thought for a long time and then said, "In theory, that should be the case. But I feel like there's something wrong." Yi Xian asked, "What's wrong?" Xiaota thought for a long time and said, "There doesn't seem to be anything wrong." Yi Xian said, "Then there doesn't seem to be any problem." Xiaota nodded. "There's no problem. Let's do it. I had a dream yesterday. I'm number 1 on the monthly votes. I got up and saw. I decided to continue dreaming." Chapter 2068. Let's do it. Yi Xian looked at the spirit realm princess and smiled. "Do you know the spirit palace shrine?" The spirit realm princess nodded. "Of course." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Princess, I have a way to take you directly to the spirit palace shrine, but I need your cooperation." The spirit realm princess looked at Yi Xian. "How do I cooperate?" Yi Xian walked in front of the spirit realm princess, and then he opened his palm. "Put your hand in mine, and then think of the spirit palace shrine. I'll take you there directly." Hearing this, the spirit realm princess was stunned. At this moment, the woman in black armor immediately stood in front of the spirit realm princess, and she looked at Yi Xian with an unfriendly gaze. At this moment, the spirit realm princess suddenly said, "Step back." The woman in black armor hesitated for a moment, and then she retreated to the side. The spirit realm princess looked at Yi Xian. He has the Tendo's mark, which proves that he is not a person with dirty thoughts. I believe him. As she spoke, she walked in front of Yi Xian, and then she put her right hand in Yi Xian's hand. It felt warm in the hand. Yi Xian looked at the spirit realm princess. Think of the location of the spirit palace shrine. The spirit realm princess nodded slightly, and then she slowly closed her eyes. At this moment, Xiaota's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "Young master, it seems that we don't need to hold hands to feel where the other person wants to be, right?" Yi Xian said in his heart, "It's none of your business." Xiaota was speechless. Before long, Yi Xian suddenly said, "It's done." The spirit realm princess looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian looked at the woman in black armor. "Do you want to take her with you?" The woman in black armor was speechless. The spirit realm princess nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian nodded slightly. He opened his palm, and the Qingxian sword appeared in his hand. In the next moment he disappeared on the spot with the 2 women. However, when the 3 of them entered the space-time tunnel, their expressions instantly changed. The next moment, an extremely terrifying force suddenly descended from the sky, directly suppressing Yi Xian and the other 2. Rumble. The 3 of them returned to their original positions. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the horizon. In the distant horizon, he could faintly see a woman, and that woman was currently looking down at the 3 of them. The Radiant Dimension Princess spoke in a low voice. "Ling Tian." Yi Xian glanced at the woman standing on top of the clouds with a solemn look in his eyes. Unfathomable. With his current strength, very few people could give him this kind of feeling, but this woman gave him this kind of feeling. Not simple. At this time, Ling Tian coldly glanced at Yi Xian, then turned around and disappeared. The Spirit Realm Princess looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian felt a headache coming on. He never expected that she would be able to obstruct him in the space-time tunnel. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian looked at the Spirit Realm Princess. "Do you trust me?" The Spirit Realm Princess nodded slightly. "I do." Yi Xian said, "Don't resist." As he spoke, a mysterious force enveloped the Spirit Realm Princess. The latter was slightly stunned, but she really didn't resist. In the next moment, she entered Xiao Ta's body. As soon as she entered Xiao Ta, both the Spirit Realm Princess and the woman in black armor were stunned. Yi Xian paid no attention to them. He glanced at the sky, and then he turned around and left. As soon as he turned around, he vanished without a trace. Yi Xian left the ancient city and headed towards the divine hall of the Spirit Palace. Stowaway. He didn't choose to go head-on against Ling Tian, because she wasn't alone, and she had the radiant dimension behind her. Even though he wasn't weak right now, he didn't think that he could go head-on against a radiant dimension. After he left the city, Yi Xian completely concealed his aura. However, he hadn't walked for long when an extremely terrifying force suddenly surged out from the space in front of him. Yi Xian's pupils constricted abruptly, and he flicked his thumb lightly. A sword howl resounded as the green profound sword slashed forward. The space in front of him was directly torn apart, and the powerful force was instantly sent flying by him. At this time, a jade-like finger directly touched the tip of Yi Xian's sword. Boom! The green profound sword trembled violently, and Yi Xian retreated tens of thousands of feet with his sword. After Yi Xian stopped, a flame and lightning suddenly appeared behind him. This flame and lightning was like a sharp blade that directly tore the space behind Yi Xian and slashed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly, and the green profound sword suddenly flew out from his sheath. The green profound sword directly slashed at the flame and lightning. Rumble! A burst of flames erupted. At this time, a white fist suddenly blasted in front of Yi Xian. At this time, it was too late for the green profound sword to return to its sheath. However, Yi Xian's expression was very calm, and another sword appeared in his sheath. It was an ordinary sword. Yi Xian gently flicked his thumb. The sword was unsheathed, and behind this sword, there were 6 more swords. 6 consecutive swords. When the first sword slashed the fist mark, the sword immediately exploded, and the fist mark continued to penetrate. One by one, the swords were shattered. There was no way to block this fist at all. In the end, all 6 swords were destroyed. At this time, Yi Xian's green profound sword was already sheathed, and the next moment, the sword was unsheathed. Boom! The fist was directly shattered by the green profound sword. Yi Xian lightly tapped the tip of his toes, and he retreated several thousand feet. He looked into the distance, and not far away stood a woman in a white dress. It was that Ling Tian. Ling Tian looked at Yi Xian. "What the hell are you?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. "What the hell?" Ling Tian stared at Yi Xian. "Hand her over." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "I don't know what you're talking about." Ling Tian's brows furrowed slightly. "Where did you hide her?" Yi Xian frowned deeply. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Ling Tian stared at Yi Xian for a moment, and the next moment, she suddenly disappeared from the spot. From afar, Yi Xian squinted his eyes, and with a gentle flick of his thumb, the green profound sword flew out. Boom! A white light suddenly exploded in front of him. A shadow retreated thousands of feet away. It was that Ling Tian. Ling Tian looked at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand, and slightly frowned. "What sword is that?" Yi Xian looked at Ling Tian, and his eyes had a trace of seriousness. This woman in front of him was actually able to resist his green profound sword. It was a little terrifying. Meanwhile, Ling Tian looked at Yi Xian. "Who are you?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he decided to be reasonable. Elder Ling Tin, do you know the spirit ancestor? The spirit ancestor. Ling Tian's eyes instantly narrowed when she heard this. You know the spirit ancestor? Yi Xian nodded. I do. I'm on the same side as the spirit ancestor. Ling Tian stared at Yi Xian for a moment, and then she said, No, you don't know the spirit ancestor. Yi Xian wanted to say something else, but Ling Tian suddenly vanished on the spot. In the next moment, countless mysterious and terrifying forces appeared in the surroundings, and these forces shot directly towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian was shocked, and he swiftly drew his green profound sword and swept it horizontally. Bang! An expanse of light erupted in front of him, and in an instant, the space in front of Yi Xian turned pitch black. Meanwhile, 2 fingers were pointed at his green profound sword. Bang! The green profound sword shook violently, and then a powerful force passed through it and struck Yi Xian. Rumble! Yi Xian was instantly blasted over 10 kilometers away, and as soon as he stopped moving, his entire body fell into an expanse of white space. Yi Xian frowned slightly, and then his pupils constricted as he hurriedly drew his sword and slashed. Draw your sword to decide life and death. Bang! An expanse of light suddenly erupted in front of Yi Xian. Rumble! An explosion suddenly resounded in this expanse of white space, and then Yi Xian was blasted back again. As he retreated, the white space in the surroundings suddenly trembled, and then strands of strange energy seeped out from within it. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. This energy wasn't the energy of space, so his green profound sword couldn't disregard it. Meanwhile, the princess voice resounded in Yi Xian's mind. This is spiritual energy. Be careful. Spiritual energy. Yi Xian didn't have the time to think. He took a step forward, and then an expanse of light enveloped the space around him. The core sword domain. Countless rays of light flashed horizontally and vertically within the core sword domain, and it was an extremely shocking sight. However, the rays of light were gradually vanishing. They couldn't resist the spiritual energy at all. Yi Xian's brows knit together tightly. He had no other choice but to activate his bloodline energy. Because he would probably be instantly transformed into nothingness if he allowed the spiritual energy to approach him. As soon as he activated his bloodline energy, Yi Xian raised his thumb lightly, and then a blood-red sword suddenly slashed forward. The sound of something tearing resounded as the spiritual energy in front of Yi Xian was torn apart. At the same time, the green profound sword slashed down towards Ling Tian. Ling Tian had a calm expression on her face. When the green profound sword arrived before her, she suddenly pressed her fingers together and pointed forward, and then a ray of white light appeared on the tip of her finger. Bang! She pressed her finger against the green profound sword, but Ling Tian frowned in the next moment. Because the ray of white light on the tip of her finger was actually dimming at a visible speed, and Ling Tian hurriedly withdrew her finger when it was about to vanish completely. In the next moment, her figure shook, and she was 3 kilometers away when her figure appeared once more. Meanwhile, the green profound sword had arrived before her again. Ling Tian advanced instead of retreating. She took a step forward and pressed 2 fingers forward. When her fingers touched the green profound sword, her fingers suddenly slanted and missed the tip of the sword. After that, she pressed her fingers together and swept them horizontally against the green profound sword. Bang! The powerful force she exerted blasted the green profound sword flying. In the next moment, she'd appeared in front of Yi Xian, and then she tapped her finger towards the center of Yi Xian's forehead. If it were to hit, then Yi Xian's head would instantly explode into pieces. Yi Xian hadn't expected that she would actually be able to blast the green profound sword flying. He didn't have the time to feel shocked before he tapped his thumb lightly once more, and then another blood-red sword flew forward. Moreover, he'd executed 9 successive attacks. 9 consecutive attacks. Moreover, without the green profound sword, Ling Tian chose to go head-on against Yi Xian's 7 attacks. A wisp of viciousness flashed through Ling Tian's eyes, and then she directly tapped her finger against the sword in the lead. Bang! In an instant, the sword in the ledge shattered into pieces. At the same time, an extremely terrifying and formidable force swept out from the tip of her finger, and then the remaining 6 swords were instantly transformed into nothingness. In the next moment, her finger shot straight towards Yixian. On the other hand, Yixian's eyes had closed slowly in the distance. At the same time, the green profound sword had returned to its sheath. Chapter 2069. When it arrived in front of Yixian, Yixian suddenly opened his eyes. Battle intent. The energy of his bloodline. At this moment, Yixian hadn't just activated the energy of his bloodline, he'd even activated his boundless battle intent. As soon as his battle intent appeared, Yixian's bearing had instantly undergone a tremendous change. Yixian tapped it lightly with his thumb. A sword howl suddenly resounded, and then a ray of light slashed forward. Bang! Ling Tian was instantly blasted over 10 kilometers away, and her entire right hand had cracked apart when she stopped moving. Moreover, the space around her had been obliterated as well. She'd endured the terrifying force of Yixian's attack, but the space around her hadn't been able to endure it. After Ling Tian stopped moving, she gazed at Yixian, and her brows were knit together slightly while a trace of a solemn and surprised expression could be seen in the depths of her eyes. Who exactly are you? Why are you interfering in the matters of my radiant dimension? Needless to say, she was quite shocked right now. Because the strength of Yixian's battle intent had slightly exceeded her expectations. She didn't remember such a formidable swordsman existing in the 6 dimensions. Where did this fellow come from? Yixian glanced at Ling Tian and smiled. Elder Lington, can we talk? Ling Tian gazed at Yixian with a calm expression. What do you want to talk about? Yixian thought for a moment and said, Can you spare the princess? Ling Tian shook her head. No. Yixian spoke in a low voice. I think that it's best if you don't touch her. Ling Tian stared at Yixian. Are you threatening me? Yixian shook his head. I'm being kind. The princess is able to communicate with the spirit ancestor, and the spirit ancestor has ordered me to protect her. Ling Tian fell silent for a moment before she said, You know the spirit ancestor? Yixian nodded. Ling Tian shook his head. She must die. Yixian frowned. Why are you so stubborn? Aren't you afraid of the spirit ancestor? Ling Tian looked at Yixian. I'm scared. Yixian was about to speak when Ling Tian said, But she's not here, is she? Yixian's expression froze. Ling Tian continued, I can feel that you have the Tendo's mark in your body. In other words, you have been acknowledged by the Tendo. You said that you know the spirit ancestor, and I believe you. Because of this, I don't want to kill you. Yixian looked at Ling Tian. Can you kill me? Ling Tian nodded. If you don't believe me, we can give it a try. Yixian laughed. Let's give it a try then. As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his thumb, and the green profound sword suddenly flew out from its scabbard. This sword carried a powerful aura, sword force, bloodline power, and battle intent. In the distance, Ling Tian's expression was calm. She raised her right hand slowly and pressed it down lightly. Bang! Yixian's green profound sword suddenly stopped on the spot. Its aura and strength were still there, but it didn't move. Yixian was shocked when he saw this because he realized that he had lost contact with the green profound sword. Right at this moment, Ling Tian suddenly vanished mysteriously. Yixian frowned. In the next moment he felt his vision go white, and he had been brought to a strange spacetime. Yixian glanced at the surroundings. It was a vast expanse of whiteness, and he couldn't see anything. Meanwhile, the spirit realm princess spoke in a low voice. This is the white space, an extremely dangerous spacetime. Time passes extremely quickly here, and a day here is equivalent to 10 years in the outside world. Moreover, the spacetime here is reversed, and your lifespan is flowing away at least 100 times faster than the outside world. Coupled with the special characteristics of this place, it won't be long before you perish on the spot. Yixian's face instantly fell when he heard this. A day is equivalent to 10 years in the outside world? This was the complete opposite of the small pagoda's function. It didn't take long for Yi Xian's expression to change, because he noticed that something seemed to be flowing away from within him. The spirit realm princess spoke in a low voice. It's your vitality. You have to leave this place as soon as possible. Vitality? Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and tried to sense the green profound sword. However, he couldn't sense it at all. The green profound sword seemed to have lost its connection with him. Yi Xian's face fell, but he didn't think too much about it. He took a step forward, and then he lightly pushed with his thumb. Suddenly, a sword flew out from the sheath. An expanse of sword light shot out like a waterfall. A hole was torn open in front of Yi Xian, but it was still white. Yi Xian frowned when he saw this. If he had the green profound sword, then he was confident in his ability to leave this place. After all, the green profound sword disregarded all space-time. Unfortunately, he'd lost contact with the green profound sword. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he attacked once more. This time, he swung his sword a few times in succession, and formidable sword energy tore through the surroundings. However, no matter how he tore, he was unable to completely tear open the space here. Even if he entered the hole, he was still within the white space. At this moment, he noticed to his astonishment that his hair had turned white. His vitality was really flowing away at a rapid pace. If it was merely a single day here that was equivalent to 10 years in the outside world, then he could persist for a long time with his current lifespan. However, the problem was that there was a counterforce here, and it was speeding up the loss of his vitality. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly frowned. He'd thought of something. A day here was equivalent to 10 years in the outside world, and 10 years in Xiaota was equivalent to a day in the outside world. What if I enter Xiaota's body? Yi Xian didn't think too much about it and directly entered Xiaota's body. As soon as he entered Xiaota's body, his eyes closed slowly. A long time passed before the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, because he noticed that he'd returned to normal. The vitality within his body wasn't flowing away anymore. It was even. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, and then he gazed at the radiant princess and said, "How long can she maintain the space in the outside world?" The radiant princess fell silent for a short moment before she said, "It can't last long. It consumes a huge amount of energy to maintain it." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Then we'll just have to wait." The radiant princess looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "What kind of space is the white world space?" The radiant princess said in a deep voice, "It's a very special space. It's completely different from the space we normally stay in. Only an elite at the level of Ling Tian can open it." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Is she incarnate bliss?" The radiant princess shook her head. "No." Yi Xian was a bit curious. "Is she above incarnate bliss?" The radiant princess nodded. "Strictly speaking, she is above the circle drawer because incarnate bliss is also a circle drawer. However, when incarnate bliss breaks through again, she becomes a world breaker. The so-called world breaker is to break the wall of time and space and explore a brand new space. The standard of a world breaker is to explore the white world space. Not only that, but she also needs to be able to enter it. An elite at the level of Ling Tian can not only enter but also use this kind of space." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "I understand." The radiant princess suddenly said, "Was the space in Xiaota created by the spirit ancestor?" Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "No." The radiant princess was slightly stunned and said, "No?" Yi Xian nodded. The radiant princess hesitated and said, "The space in this place is even more terrifying than the white world space. It should be said that it's of a higher level." Yi Xian was a bit puzzled. "Why?" The radiant princess said in a deep voice, "The time in the white world space is smooth. It follows the flow of time. However, the time in Xiaota is reversed." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Smooth? Reverse?" The radiant princess nodded. Yi Xian hesitated and said, "Can you tell me more about it?" The radiant princess glanced at Yi Xian and explained, "You stay in the white world for a day, which is equivalent to 10 years passing outside. The flow of time here is smooth. However, it speeds up time, but it follows the flow of time outside. If you stay in Xiaota for 10 years, only 1 day has passed outside. This is equivalent to the time in your space reversing the flow of time outside. It's not very difficult to follow, but it's very difficult to reverse. Someone used a great magical ability to forcibly change the flow of time here. This is very terrifying. Very terrifying. Yixian smiled slightly. So that's how it is. The radiant princess glanced at Yixian and didn't say anything. At this moment, Yixian suddenly raised his head. The next moment he disappeared. After leaving Xiaota, Yixian returned to his original position. At this moment, the white world spacetime had disappeared. Not far in front of him was Ling Tian. Ling Tian looked at Yixian. How did you do it? She had to say that she was really shocked at this moment. Very shocked. Because she didn't expect that the guy in front of her would ignore the flow of time in the white day spacetime. How did he do it? Yixian's heart suddenly moved. The next moment, the green profound sword appeared in front of him. He had lost contact with the green profound sword before, but the sword hadn't been taken away by Ling Tian. The power of the sword was still there, but it was suppressed by Ling Tian in some mysterious way. However, it could only be suppressed for a while. Yixian inserted the green profound sword into the scabbard and looked at Ling Tian. How did you enter the white world spacetime? He originally wanted to study the white world spacetime, but unfortunately, when he came out, the white world spacetime had disappeared. Of course, he only dared to study it with the green profound sword. He was also very afraid of the white world spacetime. Ling Tian looked at Yixian. You answer my question first. How did you survive in the white world spacetime? Yixian frowned slightly. Is the white world spacetime scary? Ling Tian's eyebrows furrowed slightly. Isn't it scary? Yixian smiled slightly. I don't think it's scary at all. Actually, it's quite fun. Speaking of this, he looked at Ling Tian. Elder Ling Tian, can you open the white world spacetime again? I want to go in and play. Ling Tian looked at Yixian and didn't speak. Yixian said seriously. Really, I want to go in and take a look. Just open it and let me go in and play. Ling Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Are you pretending? Yixian. P.S. I bought something and there was a problem. Then I found that the after-sales service was too bad. I suddenly thought that the readers who read my book are my customers. Then, I'm being fancy every day. It's a bit disrespectful to the readers. But I update slowly. I just want to accompany you more. I'm afraid that if I update quickly, I'll finish writing. At that time, without your company, what's the point of my life? I just want you to accompany me a little more. Can you understand me? You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.